Chapter 25-20. Although the young woman was charming and graceful, there was a frown between her brows. It was obvious that there was something troubling her. Rong-er. Song Qingshu couldn't help but call out to her. Huang Yaoshi immediately looked at him. Ah! Huang Rong also saw him. Her body trembled and her eyes were filled with disbelief. If you have something to say it inside. Huang Yaoshi couldn't help but snort when he saw the two of them holding hands and looking at each other with tears in their eyes. He walked into the island with a dark expression. Song Qingshu hurried to Huang Rong's side and said, "I haven't seen you for a few days, why have you lost weight?" Huang Rong was a little flustered. Why are you here?" Seeing her expression, Song Qingshu smiled. "You don't have to worry about me forcing you. I'm here for your father." "For my father?" Huang Rong was relieved when she heard that he wasn't here to force her to make a decision. She blinked her eyes in confusion. The three of them sat down in the house. Song Qingshu couldn't help but look around. Where are Miss Lu and Miss Qing? He heard that Huang Rong was pregnant and that they were taking care of her on Peach Blossom Island. Huang Yaoshi was so angry that he laughed. "Isn't it enough to harm my daughter? Now you want to harm my disciple?" Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly. He was just asking casually and didn't expect to provoke this gunpowder barrel. Huang Rong smiled and whispered to him. It seems that the Lu family had some business with them and they went back to visit their relatives. Moreover, I can take care of myself now, so I didn't bother them. So that's how it is. Song Qingshu felt a little regretful that he missed them again when he passed by Shanin City. "You plan to deal with the Mongolian army on the sea?" Huang Yaoshi saw the two of them whispering to each other. Song Qingshu nodded. "That's right. Even though the Mongolians suffered great losses during the battle at Mount Lupan, the Mongolians have been too strong over the years, and they didn't manage to damage their foundation. If they conquer Dongying, they will definitely head south. By then, with the Dongying Navy's strength, their last weakness will be covered, and they will be invincible." Huang Yaoshi frowned. "Even if they want to go south, there are still the Jin, Qing, and Xixia in between. Isn't it better to let both sides suffer?" Song Qingshu shook his head and said, "Everyone saw how the Mongols attacked Western Xia like a hot knife cutting through butter. Western Xia is not weak, and they did not suffer any losses even after fighting against the Song Empire for 100 years. Yet, in just a few short months they were almost wiped out. You can imagine how the Song Empire is going to defend itself once they attack the Song Empire." Huang Rong, who was by the side, nodded as well. "That's right. Reaping the benefits of a third party is only built when the two enemies are evenly matched. Right now, Mongolia's strength far surpasses that of any country in the Central Plains. If we just sit back and do nothing, they will defeat us one by one. After they swallow up those countries, Mongolia will become stronger, and it will be even harder for us to catch up." Seeing his daughter speak up for him, Huang Yaoshi angrily snorted. It was true that women tended to leave their husbands. Perhaps she had forgotten, but he remembered clearly. That year, she also helped Guojing, that idiot, to anger me. At this moment, Song Qingshu said, "The best way to deal with the invincible Mongolian cavalry is to drag them into a naval battle. I've been planning for many years and finally succeeded in luring the Mongolian army to Dongying. If we miss this opportunity, I'm afraid we won't get another chance." Huang Yaoshi was surprised. Didn't the Mongolians attack Dongying because they sent the Shuiwe sect to kill Temujin? What does that have to do with you? With a bitter smile, Song Qingshu explained his disguising skills and showed them the basics. Now that things had come to this, he wasn't afraid that his secret would be revealed. Moreover, he knew that Huang Yaoshi was a patriot and would never betray him. Huang Yaoshi was shocked and couldn't help but sigh. "So you were the one who did all this. Now that I think about it, I admire you." Noticing his daughter's calm expression, he couldn't help but ask, "You already knew?" Huang Rong shook her head. "Although he didn't tell me directly before, He reminded me a few times, and I can roughly guess what happened. Song Qingshu couldn't help but sigh. Rong-er, you are really smart. Huang Yaoshe chuckled. Your disguising skills are really amazing. It's a pity that you didn't become a rapist. Huang Rong couldn't help but glare at her father. Daddy, if the other party was a rapist, then what was she? Huang Yaoshe sighed inwardly, knowing that his daughter was falling deeper and deeper. He didn't have the energy to care about anything else. Although I'm an expert in Chimen Dunjia, I'm not good at fighting. I'm afraid you've found the wrong person this time. Song Qingshu shook his head. I haven't found the wrong person. Leading troops to war is secondary, but the most important thing is the weather. If we want to completely destroy the Mongolian fleet, we must borrow the power of nature, namely tsunamis and storms. Looking at the whole world, who else but you who is so familiar with astronomy, geography, and the sea? After a lot of flattery, Huang Yaoshe's expression softened. Fine, I promise you. But this is not for you, it's for the people of the world. Thank you, Island Master Huang. Song Qingshu couldn't help but be overjoyed. In addition, I would like to invite Chief Huang to Liaodong with me. Before he could finish, Huang Yaoshe was furious. He took out his jade flute and chased after him. You're still saying you're not here for Rong-er? Song Qingshu dodged and hurriedly explained. That's because Chief Huang is better at commanding troops, strategizing, and you're good at swimming. When the time comes, you'll definitely be of help. As if I'd believe you. The two chased and fought for a while, finally ending with a few bumps on Song Qingshu's head. Is this guy doing this on purpose because he knows I won't dare to fight back? Huang Yaoshe, on the other hand, felt a sense of comfort in his heart. He didn't know that it felt so good to beat a great grandmaster. Huang Yaoshe had vented his anger and looked at Song Qingshu with less hostility. He then said, Rong-er, go and make arrangements for Xiang-er and Pulu. We'll go to Liaodong together. Song Qingshu's heart trembled, and he couldn't help but look at Huang Rong. Can I go and see them? Huang Rong bit her lips, and an unexpected blush appeared on her face. Okay. Huang Rong arranged for Guofu and the Wu brothers to stay on the island to take care of the twins. After all, the island had all kinds of servants, so there was no need to worry about them not being able to take care of them. Of course, considering Guofu's impetuous character, she also sent a letter to Cheng-Ying to ask her meticulous junior sister to come and take care of the twins. When they left the island, Huang Rong couldn't help but whisper to Song Qingshu, I deliberately sent Fu-er away. You know she used to like you, but when she found out about the rumors, she was very angry, so I didn't dare to let her see you. Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly. That's just right. At first, Guojing wanted to betroth Guofu to him. Who knew that things would turn out this way? After boarding the Shui family's fleet, even Huang Yaoshe was amazed. He had been at sea for a long time, so he had naturally heard of the Shui family's fleet. Now that he saw Shui Baoqin, a young girl, managing such a large fleet so well, he felt as if the new generation had surpassed the old one. Shui Baoqin warmly received the father and daughter. Her words and actions were exactly like a lady from a noble family, and there was nothing wrong with her. Huang Rong was very smart, so she immediately realized the relationship between the two from their expressions and actions. She couldn't help but secretly sigh. He really was a devil incarnate, flirting with so many beautiful girls wherever he went. Next, the fleet went north. Along the way, Song Qingshu kept discussing with Huang Yaoshe, Shui Baoqin, and Huang Yaoshe the various possibilities of fighting on the sea, and gradually gained some understanding of the upcoming war. Next, they went to Yangzhou to pick up Hua Qintong. Among her beauties, no one could match her ability to lead troops to war. However, she had lived in the northwest for a long time and had no experience in fighting on the sea, so she needed the help of Huang Rong, Huang Yaoshe, and Shui Baoqin. Originally, Zhou Zhirua wanted to go with them, but she was pregnant. Obviously, the hard work she had done in the northwest had played a role. Song Qingshu was pleasantly surprised and firmly refused to let her go with them. The first trimester of a pregnant woman was the most dangerous period, and the baby couldn't be affected at all. How could she be tired from the upcoming war? Zhou Zhiruo had no choice but to stay in Yangzhou to help Ren Yingying and be ready to support her at any time. Kazli also wanted to go with them, but Hua Qingtong refused. She didn't want her sister to take any risks. Kazli was also considerate. She knew that she couldn't play a role on the battlefield and needed someone to protect her, so she didn't insist. Yuan Zi originally wanted to go with them, but thinking that Kazli was here alone and they didn't speak the language, she couldn't be at ease because of their deep sisterly relationship, so she decided to stay. Then the fleet went up the Yellow Sea to the Golden Snake Camp and met up with Xia Qingqing and Ajio. The two women had already received a messenger pigeon and prepared the navy of the Golden Snake Camp. The navy of the Golden Snake Camp had always been outstanding, and there was a lot of room for them to play this time. After parting with Ajio and Xia Qingqing for many years, Song Qingshu hugged them tightly and felt extremely guilty. On the contrary, it was the two women who kept comforting him that the important things were more important. In addition, he sent Xing Rou and Yelu Yanbei to Yanjing City to inform Dongfang Mushu. It should be noted that the navy of the Qin kingdom couldn't be underestimated. When the time came, they would definitely unite all forces. Then, Song Qingshu took the women and the fleet to the Divine Dragon Island, leaving the main force there to wait for an opportunity. The Divine Dragon Island was on the east of the Liaodong Peninsula, not too far from the Korean peninsula. If the main force went further, it would easily alarm the Mongolian scouts. Fang Yi and Mu Jianping were very excited to see him. It should be noted that it was really lonely to stay on the Divine Dragon Island all these years. The number of times they met with Song Qingshu could be counted on one hand. If they couldn't go to the Golden Snake Camp, sometimes to accompany Ajio and Qingqing, it would probably be very difficult for them to hold on. Song Qingshu felt very guilty. He thought that since the important matter had been settled, he must treat them well and make up for what he owed them all these years. However, the most surprising thing was that the two women actually trained the navy of the Divine Dragon Island in good order. He knew that the adorable Mu Jianping definitely didn't have this ability. The main credit probably belonged to Fang Yi. He had to admit that this woman was indeed very capable. After settling down on the Divine Dragon Island for 2 days and arranging everything, Song Qingshu went to Goryeo alone. Originally, Ajio, Xia Qingqing, and the others advised him not to take risks. After all, the son of a rich family shouldn't sit in a corner. Now that he had such a large force under his command, it was too dangerous to investigate these things in person. It was better to directly let the scouts investigate the news. However, Song Qingshu didn't agree because this matter was too important. The opportunity to deal with the Mongolians would definitely disappear in a flash. He didn't feel at ease leaving it to others. Moreover, the situation in Goryeo and the Sea of Japan was changing too fast. The scouts at the bottom level might not be able to respond in time. He also couldn't reveal too much information to them in case the secret was leaked. Therefore, after thinking about it, it was better to go personally. Ajio and the others knew that what he said made sense, so they could only constantly warn him to be careful. Then, Fang Yi arranged for him to go to the nearest port and boarded a Goryeo smuggling ship to Goryeo. With the current war situation in Goryeo, only these smuggling ships would often run, and this would also help to conceal their identities. After sailing for 2 days at sea, the captain mentioned to him that the weather at sea this year was a little abnormal. From time to time they would encounter some bad weather. Song Qingshu was secretly happy, thinking that the heavens were really helping him. It seemed that Mongolia's luck was at its end. Who knew that at night, the ship would suddenly encounter a rare storm? Although the sailors on the ship tried their best to deal with it, human strength was too insignificant in front of the power of nature. In the end, the hull of the ship disintegrated in the raging waves. Although Song Qinshu had unparalleled cultivation in this vast sea, there was no place for him to use it. He could only try his best to grab onto a board and drift with the waves, rowing in the direction where there was the most likely land. The storm lasted for an entire night. Even if Song Qinshu had a profound cultivation, he was still exhausted after persisting in the waves for such a long time. Finally, he saw that he was washed to the beach of an island before he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Before closing his eyes, he vaguely saw a beautiful white figure walking towards him on the beach. He couldn't help but feel a little absurd. It seems that I'm really too tired and have hallucinations. How could I possibly meet her here? A deep sense of tiredness came over him, and he slowly closed his eyes. Everyone can guess who this white figure is. In addition, it's the beginning of the month. I should ask for monthly tickets for my new book, The Fairy of Land. Last month I was quite diligent in updating it. I should be able to get monthly tickets with a minimum consumption, right? Chapter 25-21. In his daze, Song Qinshu suddenly sensed that something was gently rubbing his forehead and cheek. Even though the other party's movements were very gentle, he was still startled. He instantly opened his eyes and prepared to capture the other party with a vigilant expression. At this critical moment, he was not sure if the other party was a friend or foe. He was not even sure if it was a human. It would be troublesome if it was a beast or something. However, when he saw the other party's appearance, his movements stopped abruptly and his face was full of disbelief. At this time, he was lying in a cave, and beside him sat a girl wearing a thin white veil. Other than her black hair, her whole body was snow-white, and her face was beautiful beyond compare. She was like a fairy who had descended from the heavens. Who else could it be but Xiaolongnu, whom he had not seen for a long time? Suddenly, he thought of something and his heart skipped a beat. Am I dead? He could not help but think this way. It was too unbelievable. This should be a deserted island near Goryeo. He had arrived here by chance in the vast sea. How could Xiaolongnu appear here thousands of miles away? He thought that he had died in the previous storm, so he saw the person he wanted to see. He could not help but panic. The late emperor died halfway through his career. For some reason, this sentence appeared in his mind. He was ambitious to do something big, and he was about to succeed, but in the end, he died at such a young age? And those beautiful female friends of mine, wouldn't they all be widowed at a young age? Seeing his face turn pale, the girl in white opposite him showed a puzzled look. Brother Song, what are you talking about? Hearing the familiar voice, Song Qinshu was stunned, and then a surge of great joy surged in his heart. He grabbed the girl's hand. Although it was a little cold, it still felt warm and fragrant. Long-er, is it really you? If not me, who is it? Xiaolongnu blinked and looked a little confused. Obviously, she did not know why he asked such a question. She wanted to pull her hand back, but he held it so tightly that she could not move. Song Qinshu quickly sat up and excitedly held her in his arms. The girl's body was quite delicate, and in his arms she was like a willow catkin. Long-er, I haven't heard from you all these years. I thought I would never see you again. Suddenly being hugged by him, Xiaolongnu's pale face blushed. She subconsciously wanted to push him away, but seeing his true feelings, she bit her lips and raised her hands to hug him back. Suddenly, a sharp pain came from her chest, and she couldn't help but cry out and cover her chest. What's wrong with you? Song Qinshu asked hurriedly when he sensed her abnormality. Xiaolongnu furrowed her brows and clutched her chest. It took her a while to regain her composure. She looked a little haggard. It's nothing, I've just been poisoned by the passion flower. This was not the first time she had been poisoned, so her tone was rather calm. Passion flower poison? Song Qinshu was stunned. How did you get poisoned by this? This was indeed puzzling. It must be known that Xiaolongnu and Yang Guo had been tortured by this poison before. It was understandable that they did not know about the passion flower at first, but they had already been poisoned before. How did they get poisoned again? Xiaolong Nu blushed and shook her head. I was poisoned by accident. Seeing that she was not giving any details, Song Qingshu knew that it would be difficult to get anything out of her if he asked her directly. He rolled his eyes and changed his strategy. This is close to Goryeo, why are you here? Xiaolong Nu answered. I was injured and fell into the water, and fell into a coma. I was saved by the Goryeo ambassadors who were passing by, so I followed them all the way back to Goryeo. Goryeo ambassadors? Song Qingshu thought that there was no such thing as a Goryeo ambassadors in the Central Plains. Suddenly, he thought of something and asked with a strange expression, Is there a pair of sisters with the surname Fu in the Goryeo ambassadors who saved you? Xiaolong Nu made a sound of surprise. How did you know? Song Qingshu suddenly understood. Calculating the time, it should be the Fu sisters who had left Xixia to find a husband and saved her on their way back to China. It seemed that good people really had good karma. He saved the Fu sisters and helped the Goryeo ambassadors, and then they saved Xiaolong Nu, otherwise they would have been separated forever. But with your martial arts, how did you get injured so badly? Song Qingshu thought that Xiaolong Nu could use the dual sword harmony skill, so even if she encountered a grandmaster, she would not be weak. How could she be injured and fall into the water? At first, Xiaolong Nu did not want to tell him, but she could not resist Song Qingshu's incessant questioning, so she told him the whole story. It turned out that when they were on Mount Wudong, Xiaolong Nu found out about the relationship between Song Qingshu and Li Qingluo. She was sad and left quietly, thinking that she would never see him again in this life. She heard that he was in Jiangnan. She purposely ran towards the north to put some distance between them. Later, when she was near Mount Heng, she met Ho Shibai. Ho Shibai was shocked by her beauty and started to pursue her crazily. Unfortunately, Xiaolong Nu had experienced the vast ocean and could not be moved by water. How could she like him? Ho Shibai's pursuit was fruitless. He, who had always been a gentleman, even had crazy ideas because of Xiaolong Nu's beauty. He wanted to use force to capture her and then slowly reform her. However, Xiaolong Nu used the dual sword harmony skill to beat him up. In order to save his life, he revealed a piece of information about Song Qingshu. He said that there were masters from Mongolia who went to the Passionless Valley to ask for passion flowers to deal with Song Qingshu. After all, if a Dumas like Song Qingshu was poisoned by the passion flowers, he would be better off dead than alive. Even though Xiaolong Nu was angry at Song Qingshu's actions, she was still worried about Song Qingshu's safety. She decided to go to the Passionless Valley. She traveled day and night, and at the Passionless Valley, she met a Mongolian master who was picking passion flowers. At first, it was fine. Even Jinluan Fuang was no match for her dual sword harmony skill, let alone a normal Mongolian master. However, a mysterious man wearing a mask appeared. The man's martial arts were ridiculously high, and Xiaolong Nu was quickly defeated. She accidentally fell into the passion flowers and was stabbed by the passion flowers. She had no choice but to escape. Even though her lightness skill was very high, she could not shake off the man. She chased after him all the way until she fell into a river off a cliff. Only then did the man give up. Xiaolong Nu was poisoned and severely injured. She fell into a coma after falling into the water. She thought that she was going to die, but when she woke up, she found that she had been rescued by someone on a boat. She found out from the two beautiful sisters that they were the ambassadors from Goryeo. The Crown Prince of Goryeo was accompanying them, but she could see that there were not many of them. Xiaolong Nu wanted to leave and inform Song Qingshu about the passion flowers, but her injuries were too severe, and she could not move freely. Furthermore, the boat had been sailing down the river to the sea, so she had no choice but to return to Goryeo with the Fu sisters while she recuperated from her injuries. The Crown Prince of Goryeo was originally impatient to save a Han, but when he saw Xiaolong Nu's extraordinary beauty, he was immediately shocked. Not only did he agree, He often came to ask about her well-being and fawned over her. Luckily, the Fu sisters were watching over him, so he did not dare to do anything rash. Later on, when Xiaolong Nu's injuries healed, the Crown Prince of Goryeo did not have much of a chance. Of course, Xiaolong Nu was a kind person. After all, he had saved her life, so she was very grateful to him. Song Qingshu thought to himself, that stinky brat actually dares to have the idea of hitting Xiaolong Nu. It seems that the bitterness he suffered in Western Xia wasn't enough to teach him a lesson. However, when he looked at Xiaolong Nu's beautiful face, he thought to himself, if it were me, I probably wouldn't be able to control myself. Oh yes, what kind of martial arts does the masked man use? Song Qingshu had a guess. Xiaolong Nu roughly described it with her hands. Song Qingshu said in a deep voice, "It really is him. Who is it?" Xiaolong Nu asked curiously. Only then did Song Qingshu explain the grudge between him and Venerable Ming. On the surface, Venerable Ming seemed to be allies with him against the Mongols, but he was secretly preparing a way to deal with him. The passion flower was indeed a very effective way. If Venerable Ming had not been seriously injured by Temujin and the others, he would have already attacked me. It seems that I really need to be more careful in the future. Although my cultivation is high enough, it is easier to dodge a spear in the open than a stab in the dark. Don't worry, Long Air. Although Gongsun Ji and Qiu Qianqi are dead, the poison of the passion flower is not incurable. The Gelsemium elegans can counteract poison with poison, and the white fish in the cold pond at the bottom of the Passionless Valley can also detoxify the poison. Song Qingshu comforted her. Brother Song, you even know this? Xiaolong Nu's tone carried a hint of admiration. The other seemed to be omniscient and omnipotent, and nothing could trouble him. Song Qingshu smiled and asked, since you were rescued by the Goryeo ambassadors, why are you on this isolated island? Xiaolong Nu's expression darkened. Because something happened in Goryeo. Listening to her story, Song Qingshu's expression changed several times, but he finally understood the current situation of Goryeo. It turned out that during the marriage contest in Western Xia, he had pretended to be Fu Kailan and slaughtered Zulwa's ambassadors. Temujin was furious, but the Mongols were preparing to deal with the tribes of the western regions at the time and could not find the time to deal with them. Thus, Temujin sent his younger brother Hezer's eldest son, Jegu, to Goryeo with a 10,000-man army to pressure them to punish the murderer. However, the Mongols' smooth sailing in recent years had made Jegu arrogant. To him, a small border country like Goryeo was nothing, so his attitude was extremely bad. Not long after, he led his army to attack Goryeo. A few years ago, the Mongols could sweep the western countries with a 10,000-man army, so Goryeo was nothing to them. Unfortunately, Goryeo's terrain was rugged and mountainous, making it difficult for their cavalry to use their full strength. Jegu attacked for several months without gaining any advantage. In the end, the guru of Goryeo, Kailan, took action and killed Jegu during the chaos. The Mongol army suffered a great defeat. When the Mongols heard this news, they were all furious. In addition, they were preparing to conquer Dong-ing and needed Goryeo as a springboard. So, Kublai and Ali Buj mobilized their armies and attacked Goryeo. The demon master Pangban personally fought against the bright sword master Fu Kailan. After a great battle, both sides suffered heavy losses. However, the Mongols had many masters and famous generals. When Fu Kailan was seriously injured, the morale of the Goryeo army was greatly reduced. How could they hold on? Seeing that the Mongols were getting closer, the high-ranking official of Goryeo, Chuiyu, could not resist. Coupled with his old age, he died of depression. This was because his son-in-law, Jin Ruoxian, and even his son, Cui Shi, had died during the marriage contest in Western Xia. His remaining sons were even worse. Once the successor took power, the people's hearts began to waver. The retainer of the Chui clan, Jin Renjun, launched a coup and killed the Chui clan. he replaced the Chui clan and negotiated peace with the Mongols. Song Qingshu had seen this Jin Renjun before during the marriage contest in western Xia. Now that he thought about it, although Jin Ruoxian and Chui Shi were killed by the Dongying people, he might have played a part in it. After Jin Renjun took power, he changed his attitude of opposing the Mongols. Instead, he submitted to them. The Mongols had many years of war. As long as the enemy was willing to submit, they would be happy to accept it. However, a new problem soon appeared. Because the king of Goryeo died during the coup, the throne of Goryeo was now vacant. Kublai and Ali Buj had a disagreement on who to appoint as the new king. Ali Buj supported the crown prince, Wang Qi, while Kublai supported the crown prince's younger brother, Duke Wang Qi. At first, Song Qingshu was curious why Kublai, as the elder brother, would support his younger brother. He was fighting with Ali Buj for the right to inherit the throne. Wouldn't this be giving the enemy an excuse? However, he soon understood. Back then, the crown prince of Goryeo, Wang Qi, was humiliated by Su Liewu during the marriage contest in western Xia. Su Liewu was on good terms with Kublai, so he was worried that Wang Qi would hate him and not dare to support him. Instead, he supported his younger brother, Duke Wang Qi. Ali Buj was naturally happy to support the crown prince. The two of them argued until their faces were red, and neither could convince the other. After that, Goryeo was divided into two factions. One faction supported the crown prince, while the other faction supported Duke Wang Qi. Guru Kailin, who had a high status in Goryeo, didn't express his opinion. He gathered his people and stayed in his residence, maintaining a neutral attitude. However, one day, when Ali Buj accepted the crown prince's invitation to attend a banquet in the city, a riot suddenly occurred in the city. A group of mysterious people rushed into the hall and killed Ali Buj and the crown prince. Ali Buj had many experts by his side, and there were even quite a few grandmasters among them. However, they couldn't protect him. It was obvious that there was a grandmaster among the group of people. Someone recognized the bright sword technique among them, and they quickly pointed the finger at Fu Kailin. Because of Ali Buj's death, the Mongolians were furious. The army entered the city and pointed their weapons at the bright sword pavilion. Countless experts and soldiers swarmed over. Even Fu Kailin couldn't hold them off, let alone when he was seriously injured. Xiao Longnu also joined the battle because she was grateful to the Fu sisters and the crown prince of Goryeo for saving her life. Unfortunately, her strength alone was limited. Although the disciples of the Bright Sword Pavilion tried their best to resist, they were still no match for them. Fu Kailin died in battle, and Xiao Longnu could only barely save Fu Junxian. The Fu sisters broke out of the encirclement and originally planned to escape to the Central Plains by sea. However, the Mongolian army and Duke Wang Qi's troops chased after them all the way. Although a storm stopped the troops from chasing after them, they were also separated. Xiao Longnu was brought to this deserted island by the wave. She was trapped here for a few days. Fortunately, the island didn't lack food and water, so she survived. One day, when she was looking at the beach, she happened to save Song Qingshu. After listening to her experience, Song Qingshu couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. He thought to himself that everyone's life was quite interesting. It was just that he had neglected these things in the past. A reader, Floating Tears, kept trying to convince me to let the main character be poisoned by the love flower poison. However, I felt that the main character knew that the Gelsemium elegans could cure it and that the love flower poison was meaningless to him. However, when he wrote about Xiao Longnu, he suddenly thought that he could add this plot to her so that her appearance in Goryeo would be more reasonable. I have to thank this reader for giving me this inspiration. Chapter 25-22. But why do I feel like Kublai was the one who caused Ali Buj's death? Song Qingshu thought about it and realized that Kublai was the one who benefited the most from Ali Buj's death. Originally, when Kublai and Ali Buj fought against each other, Their strengths were about the same. Kublai had more people under his command, but because of the Mongolian rule that the youngest son of Ali Buj was the most elite of the Mongolian armies, the two of them had never been able to determine a winner after so many years. Who knew that Ali Buj would suddenly die in Goryeo? The scales of victory instantly tilted towards Kublai. However, Song Qingshu was most worried about something else. When he tried to assassinate Temujin using his identity as a member of the Shueiyue clan, he successfully caused the Mongolians to invade the east. This was mainly because Kublai and Ali Buj wanted to take revenge for Temujin in order to fight for the throne. But now that Ali Buj was dead, the throne was already in Kublai's hands. Would he still go to Dongying? Yes, the Fu sisters said that the people from the Bright Sword Pavilion didn't even try to assassinate Ali Buj. Unfortunately, no one listened to their explanation. The angry Mongolians killed everyone they saw. Even though Xiaolong Nu had a calm and collected personality, she still frowned when she remembered the brutality of the Mongolian warriors. We have to find a way to leave this island and go to Goryeo to help. Song Qingshu stood up. When you were brought here by the storm, is your boat still there? Seeing Xiaolong Nu shake her head, he couldn't help but complain, Goryeo's man-made boat technology is really lousy. The Goryeo smuggling boat he was on was destroyed by the storm. The Goryeo boat that Xiaolong Nu was on couldn't withstand the storm either. If it wasn't lousy, then what was it? Then I'll go see if there are any materials on the island that can be used to make a raft. Song Qingshu was very anxious. He had planned for so long to defeat the Mongolian army. He didn't want everything to go to waste because of this accident. But your injury? Xiaolong Nu asked hurriedly. Song Qingshu smiled. Don't worry, I'm fine. I'm just a little tired from fighting the waves. If you're worried about me, why don't you help me? He opened his arms and looked at her with a smile. Xiaolong Nu hesitated for a moment, but still lowered her head and snuggled into his arms. She let his hands wrap around her shoulders and helped him up. Song Qingshu did not expect that she would be so obedient and could not help but be overjoyed. Looking at her beautiful face that was so close to his, her skin was so soft that it could be broken with a blow, he could not help but lean forward and kiss her. Xiaolong Nu looked at him reproachfully. Just as she was about to say something, she suddenly screamed and squatted on the ground, clutching her chest. What's wrong? Is the love flower poison acting up again? Song Qingshu immediately reacted and hurriedly put his hand to check her pulse. As the saying goes, a long illness makes one a doctor. Over the years, he has been injured and poisoned. Now he can barely be considered a famous doctor in this aspect. Xiaolong Nu nodded. Song Qingshu smiled. Although it's not a good thing, I'm really a little happy right now. Xiaolong Nu was stunned and asked in confusion, Why are you happy? Song Qingshu held her hands and gently looked into her eyes. Because you have been poisoned by the love flower poison. The poison will only take effect when you think of the person you love. After you saw me today, you felt pain several times in a row, proving that I am the person you love. How can I not be happy? Xiaolong Nu blushed and sighed softly. I know what you are worried about. To be honest, I couldn't tell my own heart from the beginning until I was poisoned by the love flower poison. At first, when I thought of Gua my heart would hurt, but every time I thought of you, it would hurt even more. In the past few months in Korea, it gradually didn't hurt as much when I thought of Gua. Instead, it hurt more and more when I thought of you. I knew that I would not be able to leave you. I originally wanted to go back to Jiangnan to find you, but something happened in Korea and I couldn't leave them, so I delayed it until now. Song Qingshu was overjoyed and excitedly held her in his arms. Longer, I will never let you leave me again. It hurts, Xiaolong Nu said, feeling wronged. Song Qingshu hurriedly let go of her. I'm sorry. Before I find the antidote for you, I will do my best not to make you fall in love. Xiaolong Nu nodded and smiled sweetly. She was like a beautiful flower that had just been born. She was so beautiful that even Song Qingshu, who was used to seeing beautiful women, couldn't help but be stunned. After that, Song Qingshu and Xiao Longnu strolled around the island. In fact, Xiao Longnu had already explored the island before and was already quite familiar with the terrain of the island. She acted as a guide and took him to familiarize himself with the island. Along the way, the two chatted and told each other what had happened after they parted. The journey was not boring at all. Soon, they found a forest. Although he did not have any tools, Song Qingshu's sword qi was sharper than any divine weapon. Soon, he chopped down some trees and used them to make a raft. Xiao Longnu used the bark of the trees to weave ropes. The two cooperated with each other and did their own work. They worked at sunrise and rested at sunset, just like a man farming and a woman weaving. To Xiao Longnu, she even felt that it was not bad for the two of them to live on this isolated island. There were only the two of them in the whole world. However, the responsibility on Song Qingshu's shoulders was too heavy. He could not stay on the island leisurely. He worked overtime to make the raft. The two of them set out to sea together. However, not long after they set out, a huge wave came and the raft fell apart. The two of them fell into the sea. Song Qingshu hurriedly swam back to the shore with Xiao Longnu in his arms. Looking at the wood that had been washed away by the waves, he could not help but smile bitterly. I was competing with the Koreans' shipbuilding skills. I didn't expect the quality of the raft to be so poor. Xiao Longnu comforted him. We have experience. We can try a few more times. I'm sure we'll be able to do better. Song Qingshu grunted and lay on the beach weakly. He looked up at the sky and the cliffs nearby. Suddenly, he saw a pale yellow color. He was stunned at first, but then he was overjoyed. Look. What is that? Xiao Longnu did not understand. Song Qingshu did not have time to explain. Wait here for me. Then, he tiptoed and climbed up the cliff like a bird. He plucked a yellow flower from the cliff and returned to Xiao Longnu's side. This is? Xiao Longnu asked in confusion. Song Qingshu laughed. This is the Gelsemium elegans. There's a cure for the poison in your body. Back then, he was afraid of the golden wave flower. After that, he went to study the various poisons in his memory. The love flower poison was definitely one of the most important ones. After all, he was quite familiar with his own temper. If he was really poisoned by the love flower poison, he would definitely be tortured. Therefore, he went to see the Gelsemium elegans and asked Ouyang Feng about its medicinal properties and usage. These days, Song Qingshu could only watch helplessly as the frequency of Xiao Longnu's poison became more and more frequent. Thinking that it was because of him, Song Qingshu felt guilty and wanted to take her away from here to find the antidote as soon as possible. However, he did not expect that there would be Gelsemium elegans on the island. Because it grew on the cliffs, he did not find it when he searched the entire island. Now that I think about it, it was a blessing in disguise that the raft broke up this time. Song Qingshu looked excited. A faint smile appeared on Xiao Longnu's face. She did not have to worry about the poison acting up in the future. This Gelsemium elegans is also highly toxic, so you have to be careful when using it. Song Qingshu's face was solemn as he explained the usage and dosage to her. However, he was still worried and personally mixed the dosage for her. Then, he reached out and sealed her Xiaohai, Tongli, Shenmen, and Xiaochong acupoints to protect her heart meridian before letting her eat it. As soon as it entered her mouth, Xiao Longnu frowned. She felt that the Gelsemium elegans was extremely smelly and bitter, far worse than the yellow lotus. However, she trusted Song Qingshu and knew that he would not lie to her, so she endured it and swallowed it. After a while, she felt a sudden movement in her abdomen, followed by a great pain. The pain was as if thousands of steel needles were stabbing her abdomen at the same time, as if her intestines were being torn apart. The two words, Gelsemium elegans, were not empty words. However, she was not surprised. Instead, she was happy because this was the same reaction that Song Qinshu had mentioned to her before. She gritted her teeth and endured it. After about the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the pain spread throughout her entire body. Her limbs and bones were all affected by the tea poison. Fortunately, Song Qinshu was by her side, using his strong inner energy to protect her vital meridians. That was why she was not harmed by the Gelsemium elegans. The pain lasted for almost an hour before she felt the pain gradually return to her abdomen. At this time, Song Qingshu's inner energy was circulating throughout her body. Now that his inner energy was no different from his hands, he could clearly feel the changes in her body. In this hour, he had already figured out the principle behind the passion flower poison. In other words, he had already used the Gelsemium elegans to fight poison with poison and found out where the passion flower poison was in her body. In fact, the passion flower poison had already spread throughout her internal organs and even some of her meridians. If it was someone else, even if they knew about it, they would not be able to do anything. However, with Song Qingshu's cultivation level, he immediately used his vast inner energy to gather the passion flower poison in her body bit by bit. Finally, he forced it out together with the Gelsemium elegans. Xiaolong Nu let out a cry and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Every mouthful of blood was bright red, much brighter than the blood of an ordinary person. Song Qingshu's face lit up with joy. "All right, the passion flower poison in your body has been completely removed." Xiaolong Nu could not help but stretch out her hand to wipe away the fine sweat on his forehead. "These few hours, you've used up a lot of your inner energy to force the poison out of me. It's been hard on you." Song Qingshu was stunned. Only then did he realize that the sky had already darkened. It turned out that he had been concentrating on forcing the poison out of her body for so long that he did not realize how much time had passed. "As long as I can force the poison out of you, this little bit of hard work is nothing." Originally, the intestine-severing grass needed to be consumed continuously for about a month before the poison could be completely eradicated. Although there were still a few stalks of intestine-severing grass on the cliff, they were definitely not enough for a month. Furthermore, even if there were enough, according to what Ouyang Feng had said before, fighting poison with poison would still cause hidden dangers to the body. Song Qingshu naturally did not want Xiaolong Nu to be in any danger, so he used an exaggerated amount of inner energy to forcefully force the passion flower poison out of her body. The sky was dark, and the wind by the sea was gradually getting stronger. He suddenly noticed that Xiaolong Nu's body was trembling slightly. He hurriedly said, "Look at my memory. Earlier, we were both soaking in the water. You were completely soaked, but I only cared about removing the poison from your body. You must have been very cold during this period of time." Xiaolong Nu shook her head. "Just now, when your inner energy was in my body, it was warm but not warm at all. In fact, it's a little cold now." Song Qingshu did not notice it before, but now he realized that her clothes were completely soaked. Her wet clothes were tightly wrapped around her delicate body and had already become translucent. Her entire body seemed even more exquisite and graceful. He did not expect Long Air's figure to be so good. Xiaolong Nu saw that he was staring at her in a daze. She lowered her head and let out a cry of surprise. Her face was completely red, and her heart, which was usually as calm as an ancient well, was now beating wildly. "Brother Song, can you turn around?" Song Qingshu's face heated up. He hurriedly took off his coat and draped it over her body to block the view in front of him. Just now, he had circulated his inner energy at full force, and the heat in his body had already evaporated his clothes. "It's already late. Let's go back to the cave first." Because Xiaolong Nu had just forced the poison out of her body was still a little weak. Song Qingshu directly grabbed her legs and carried her back to the cave. Soon, he started a fire to dry her clothes. Because they had also been stranded on this deserted island before, Xiao Long Nu did not have any clothes to change into. She could only separate the two of them with a rack and dry the clothes on it to block each other's sight. The two of them did not speak. The air in the cave seemed to be filled with a kind of ambiguous atmosphere. It was so quiet that only the crackling of the firewood could be heard. After a while, Xiao Long Nu said, "Brother Song, it's very cold here in Korea. Now it's starting to snow outside. If you give me your clothes, what will you do?" At this time, her clothes were drying on the rack. Although she was wrapped in Song Qingshu's coat, her two slender and well-proportioned thighs were completely exposed. Her skin was snow-white and delicate, even more exquisite than the best mutton-fat white jade. Song Qingshu said with a smile, "Don't worry. I have a lot of internal energy. I can bear it. But the campfire is also on my side. You gave me all the good stuff." Xiao Long Nu bit her lip. "Why don't you come over and warm yourself by the fire? At least it'll be warmer." Song Qingshu was stunned. "Is that convenient?" As soon as he said that, he wanted to slap himself. Previously, he had concluded that he was too inactive in front of Xiao Long Nu. In the end, the opportunity was right in front of him, but he pretended to be a gentleman. The other side fell into silence. After a long time she said, "You can turn your back to me." Song Qingshu was overjoyed. He did not say anything else and directly trotted over. "Brother Song, you promised to turn your back to me." Xiao Long Nu quietly wrapped herself in the coat, but she did not know where to put her legs. Song Qingshu's breathing suddenly quickened. He slowly came to her side and sat down. He gently held her hand. I won't let you leave me again." Xiao Long Nu nodded and replied with a blushing face. Song Qingshu reached out and hooked her jade-like chin. He slowly kissed her. Xiao Long Nu's eyelashes trembled slightly. Her eyes instantly became flustered. However, after a while, she slowly closed her eyes. Receiving the consent of the beauty, Song Qingshu could not help but be overjoyed. He passionately kissed her. Xiao Long Nu gently hugged him. Unfortunately, she did not know how to respond. She could only passively let him do whatever he wanted. After a long time, looking at the beautiful girl's dazzling and enchanting eyes, Song Qingshu felt a little guilty. He hurriedly said, "This was taught to me by your ancestor grandma." "You and ancestor grandma." Xiao Long Nu's beautiful face changed slightly. Only then did Song Qingshu realize the ambiguity in his words. He hurriedly explained, "That's not what I mean. It's because of her and Wang Chongyang's regret. She is worried that we will repeat the same mistake. Last time, she even taught me to be more proactive towards you." He then told her about the incident at the Lin family. Xiao Long Nu revealed a faint smile. "Actually, you don't need to use ancestor grandma as a shield. These past few months, I have been poisoned by the passion flower poison. I have long recognized my feelings for you. So, even if you really want to do something to me, I will not refuse." A young girl as beautiful as a fairy in his arms was expressing her feelings. It was more powerful than the most potent aphrodisiac in the world. How could Song Qingshu hold back? He pulled the young girl into his arms and kissed her again, his breathing ragged. With a moan, Xiao Long Nu hugged her sweetheart on top of her. Her longing for him in the past was completely ignited by him. She responded to him gently like water. She took the opportunity to lie down on a pile of straw at the side. Feeling the weight of the man on top of her, she felt shy and lustful. Her entire body became soft and tender. Song Qingshu felt as if all the bones in her body had melted. Her entire body was so soft and delicate that it was even softer and more delicate than the most expensive cushions in the palace. How could he hold back any longer? He pressed himself on top of her and became one with her. You are the most beautiful dream in my heart. No, you are the dream of many people. It's just that I am the only lucky one." Xiao Long Nu's eyes were brimming with tears. The pain she had just experienced had been dissolved by his affectionate words of love. A pair of beautiful starry eyes gazed at her man with deep affection. Her mouth was left with the sweetest and most delicate whisper, "Song Lang, it was a quiet night." There was no need for any words. Any other man would not waste time on talking. All that was left was the most primal instinct. Passion and lust, soul and flesh. The next morning, Xiaolong Nu was lying softly in Song Qingshu's arms. The two of them were confiding in each other. Suddenly, a woman's voice sounded from afar. Sister, there's a cave over there. Let's go and see if Lady Long is there." Let's shout along the way. Young Lady Long, are you there?" Another pleasant female voice sounded. Hearing this voice, Xiaolong Nu immediately sat up straight. Her beautiful body was exposed to the air. She said in a flustered tone, "Aya, it's the Fu sisters. Let's get dressed quickly." Fu Junxian and Fu Junyu? Song Qingshu also recognized them. He did not expect to be reunited with them so soon. His anger at being disturbed instantly disappeared. Not long after the two of them got dressed, two pretty figures barged into the cave. "Lady Long, are you really here? Why didn't you respond to us just now?" Who is this man?" Fu Junyu's eyes were sharp. She immediately noticed Song Qingshu behind her. "I'm looking for monthly votes for my new book, The Fairy of Land." Chapter 25-23. Xiaolong Nu blushed. "He is my husband." Fu Junyu cried out in surprise. She hurriedly came to Song Qingshu's side and looked him up and down. "You're Song Qingshu?" Even Fu Junyi, who was at the side, looked at him curiously. "You know me?" Song Qingshu stared blankly for a moment. He remembered that he had used the identity of Jia Baoyu to meet them in Xixia. In addition, he was secretly delighted. When Xiaolong Nu introduced him as her husband, Fu Junyu immediately realized that she must have mentioned it in front of the sisters. "I have heard of your name before," Fu Junyu said excitedly. "When I went to Xixia last time, I specially asked the Southern Song Dynasty's diplomatic mission to inquire about you. Unfortunately, you didn't go that time." "Oh yes." Song Qingshu did not expect to meet them at this time. For a moment, he was not sure whether he should recognize them or not. After all, he had just been intimate with Xiaolong Nu. If he recognized them, would it be a little awkward? At this time, Xiaolong Nu introduced them to him. "They are the Fu sisters that I mentioned to you before. This is the elder sister, Fu Junyi, and this is the younger sister, Fu Junyu." Hello. Song Qingshu thought, how can I not know them? "Hello," Fu Junyi nodded slightly in greeting. She then tugged at her younger sister to calm her down. Xiaolong Nu could not help but ask, "How did you get here?" Fu Junyi explained, "After we were separated at sea that night, we were rescued by General Li Shunshan, who was passing by. Then, we have been searching for you in the nearby waters these days. We thought that you were highly skilled in martial arts and should be blessed by the heavens. We searched every island and finally found you." Li Sunsin? Song Qingshu was stunned. He was the first famous general in the history of Korea. When the Japanese invaded, his navy completely defeated the Japanese navy and together with the Ming army, drove the Japanese army back to their hometown. "Do you know General Li?" Fu Junyi was a little puzzled. "I don't know him." To avoid trouble, Song Qingshu directly denied it. Fu Junyi then held on to Xiaolong Nu's hand and said, "Miss Long, now that we have confirmed that you are safe and sound, we are completely at ease and can return to Kaijing to take revenge." "Revenge?" Xiaolong Nu was confused. Fu Junyu, who was at the side, said angrily, "The Mongolians wrongly accused Master of assassinating their brother Ali Buge. They annihilated the entire Bright Sword Pavilion and only a few of us managed to escape. How can we not take revenge for Master's murder and the annihilation of our sect? Apart from avenging our sect, we also have a responsibility to restore our country," Fu Junyi added. What's the situation like in Goryeo? What are the movements of the Mongolian army? This was what Song Qinshu was most concerned about. His ship had crashed before he even reached Goryeo, and he was delayed on this island for a few days. He didn't know how Goryeo was doing. Fu Junyi thought that he was worried about her and her sister. She nodded slightly and replied, "Don't worry, we aren't reckless people. If the Mongolian army was still in Goryeo, it would be like throwing an egg against a rock if we returned. However, Kublai has already led his army out to sea from Happu harbor and crossed the Strait of Tsushima to attack Japan." Song Qinshu had been studying the information on Goryeo and Japan. He knew that Happu harbor was the future Pusan. After knowing that Brother Ali Buj's death didn't affect the Mongolian army's journey, he was completely relieved. Fu Junyi continued, "Kublai brought the fake Emperor Qi and a lot of high-ranking officials of Goryeo with him. He said that he wanted the king of Goryeo to personally lead the army, but in reality, he wanted to coerce the Goryeo army to attack Japan. Right now, the traitor Jin Rinjun is staying at Kaijing to guard the rear. Kublai also left his trusted General Bayan and chief advisor Lu Bingzhong behind to intimidate the other rebel forces and to take care of the logistics of their fleet." Song Qinshu couldn't help but say, although Kublai took away most of the Mongolian army, he also took away a lot of Goryeo's army. Bayan is a famous general, Lu Bingzhong is a top official, and Jin Rinjuan's group is also involved. I don't think you two and Li Sun-sin alone will be able to take revenge. Bayan was the most famous general under Kublai's command. In history, he was the general who destroyed the Song dynasty. Later on, he went north to fight against the rebellious Haidu. He was invincible. Fu Junyi's face darkened. "According to you people from the Central Plains, there's a saying, 'Do what you know is impossible.' Now that our country has fallen, we have nothing to lose. This is our best chance. If we wait until the Mongolians return after conquering Japan, we will have even less hope." Fu Junyi pouted. "It's a pity that heartless Jia Baoyu didn't come to save us. He sent the letter for so long, but he didn't respond at all." Song Qinshu was a little embarrassed. He rubbed his nose and said, Actually, I was sent by Jia Baoyu to help you." Fu Junyi was shocked, not to mention Fu Junyi. "But you are the king of Qi in the Great Song, and Jia Baoyu is just a playboy. What right does he have to send you here?" Fu Junyi was the more meticulous one and reacted quickly. Song Qinshu explained, "I am Jia Baoyu's good friend. Also, the Mongolians are not in the Great Song's interest, so I came here personally." Fu Junyi immediately jumped up in joy and grabbed her sister's hand. "Sister, I knew it. Baoyu won't forget us." "Yes," Fu Junyi replied. Her face was a little red, and she was obviously very excited. Song Qinshu sighed. It seemed that the two sisters had fallen too deeply into Baoyu's hands. He didn't know how they would react when they found out the truth. With this relationship, the Fu sisters looked at Song Qinshu more and more kindly and didn't hide any of their plans from him. Xiao Longnu had been on good terms with them these days, so she was naturally happy to help. In the Fu sisters' and Li Xuanxin's plan, because the enemy was outnumbered, they had to first capture the leader. They would first assassinate Boyan, Lu Bingzhong, and Jin Rinjun, leaving the Mongolians without a leader. Then, Li Xuanxin would lead the volunteer army and charge in during the chaos. Only then would they have a chance. Now that they had Song Qinshu, he sent a letter for Ajio, Qing, and the others to rush over with the navy. That way they would have a greater chance. Of course, he also agreed with the other party's plan to capture the leader first. Taking care of Boyan and the other leaders first would make the subsequent battles much easier. However, there was another problem in sneaking into Kaijing. The Fu sisters were too famous in Goryeo. Not only were they the disciples of the great master, Kai Lin, they were also very beautiful. It could be said that they were the national goddesses of Goryeo. No matter where they went, they would be recognized. Therefore, it would be difficult for the two girls to sneak into Kaijing and assassinate Boyan and the others without anyone noticing. Besides, Xiaolong Nu was a peerless beauty, and she would be the center of attention wherever she went. Therefore, if they wanted to enter the city, they would probably be discovered by Boyan's subordinates at the city gates. However, this was not a problem for Song Qingshu. He was a master of disguise, and he quickly disguised the appearances of the three girls. Although they still looked beautiful, they were no longer as eye-catching. Compared to Xiaolong Nu, who was used to it, the Fu sisters were much more surprised. Looking at their new appearance, they couldn't help but click their tongues in wonder. "Can you disguise yourself as anyone?" Fu Junyu asked curiously as she admired herself in the bronze mirror. "More or less." Song Qingshu nodded. "Amazing!" Fu Junyu didn't think too much about it, but Fu Junyu was deep in thought. The four of them sneaked into Kaijing. The current Kaijing was much more desolate than usual, and the people who passed by all looked uneasy. Song Qingshu took a look and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Goryeo city walls and residences were much shorter and shabbier than the countries in the Central Plains. It was indeed determined by the country's strength. The four of them decided to deal with Boyan and Lu Bingzhong first. After all, Jin Renjun was just a puppet. The real masters of Kaijing were Boyan and Lu Bingzhong. Because of the special circumstances of the war, the two of them were staying in the same general's mansion. It was both a residence and an office. The group came to a high place near the general's mansion and looked down. They planned to take a look at the defense there, but they suddenly noticed that it was already a mess inside. Two different groups of people were really fighting. "Are they your people?" Song Qingshu couldn't help but ask the Fu sisters. "I don't think so." The Fu sisters were also confused. Song Qingshu looked carefully and suddenly heard a familiar voice. It was the leader of the Destiny cult, Dan Yuru. He didn't expect to see her here in Goryeo. By now, he could roughly guess what was going on. It was probably Ali Bug's old subordinates who were dissatisfied with their lord's death, and were taking advantage of the fact that Kublai's main force wasn't here to rebel. However, Boyan was a famous general, and was clearly prepared. It's Jinluan Fuang," Xiaolong Nu suddenly exclaimed. She recognized one of the figures. It was obvious that she had a deep impression of the many times they had fought. Yes. Song Qingshu noticed that it wasn't just Jinluan Fuang. There were also Bai Zizai, Xiaoxiangzi, Nimixing, Yin Kashi, and other experts. He couldn't help but feel confused. These were all Kublai's trusted guests. Was Kublai still here? But according to the Fu sisters and Li Xuanxin's intelligence, he had indeed brought his army to the east to conquer Dongying. At this time, Ali Bug's subordinates were clearly unable to hold on. Boyan was continuously sending out troops. Their numbers were getting smaller and smaller. Every single one of them was surrounded and attacked by several of Boyan's warriors. Song Qingshu was about to help them when he suddenly felt something. He raised his head and looked in a certain direction. He saw a white figure floating towards him. She was so beautiful that she didn't seem like a mortal woman. The Fu sisters instinctively looked towards Xiaolong Nu. The two of them were too similar. It wasn't that they looked similar. It was that cold and refined aura and the white dress. They gave off a very similar feeling. It's her? Why is she helping Dan Yuru's group? Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel surprised when he saw who the woman in white was attacking. It was obvious that he wasn't the only one who was confused. Jinluan Fuang was both shocked and angry. "Lady Jin, why are you helping these rebels?" The woman in white was naturally Jin Bingyun. She said coldly, "It's hard to say who the rebels are now." At this time, Boyan's orders came. The fourth prince has ordered that during these critical times, anyone who rebels will be killed. Whoever captures Jin Bingyun will be promoted by 3 ranks. Hearing this reward, the eyes of the warriors under his command lit up. They howled and rushed towards Jin Bingyun. Jinluan Fuang was the leader. Xiaoxiangzi, Nimixing, and Inkashi were not to be left behind. Jin Bingyun was Pang Ban's disciple. Although her martial arts were high, Jinluan Fuang, Xiaoxiangzi, and the others were able to suppress Guojing at his peak. If it weren't for her special movement techniques, she would have been heavily injured by the combined attacks of these experts. Even so, she was still in danger. Seeing that Dan Yuru and the others were about to collapse, Song Qinshu said in a deep voice, "I'll go save them. You guys go deal with Boyan and Lu Bingzhong." At this time, most of the experts were surrounding Jin Bingyun, Dan Yuru, and the others. In contrast, the defense around Boyan and the others was much weaker. Chapter 25-24. At this time, Jin Bingyun's sword was blocked by Jinluan Fuang's weapon. A cold smile flashed across Xiaoxiangzi's skinny face. The morning stick in his hand swung towards her shoulder. Jin Bingyun bent her waist. Her entire body was like a willow tree branch, creating a possibility within the impossible, and forcefully dodged the opponent's determined strike. Her entire posture was graceful and her body was soft, as if there were no bones in it. Even though Jinluan Fuang was a monk, his eyes lit up when he saw her. Out of all the women he had seen in the past few years, Xiao Longnu was the only one with such high kung fu and such graceful movements. Just as Jin Bingyun let out a sigh of relief, a cloud of black smoke suddenly sprayed towards her face. She quickly moved to the side, but she still breathed in a little and immediately felt dizzy. Despicable! Jin Bingyun knew that this poison was powerful and quickly circulated her internal energy to force it out, but as soon as she circulated her internal energy, she felt weak all over. When Xiaoxiangzi was practicing martial arts in the barren mountains of Hunan, he once saw a toad hiding behind a broken coffin and spitting out poisonous sand, poisoning a large python. He had an epiphany, so he caught the toad, extracted its poison, refined it into poisonous sand and hid it within the morning stick. There was a mechanism at the end of the stick. With a press of his finger, the poisonous sand shot out. Ever since he learned this hidden weapon, he's only used it a few times. The last time he used it was when he and Jinluan Fuang worked together to fight Guojing. It was a pity that Guojing's kung fu was high, plus he had eaten the blood of a poisonous snake when he was young, so he had a certain resistance to poison, so the effect wasn't very good. This time Jin Bingyun wasn't so lucky. Very quickly the poison circulated through her entire body. Her entire body swayed, and she couldn't even stand properly. Nimixing gave a sinister laugh and reached out to grab her. He'd been drooling over this woman's beauty for a long time, but normally this woman from the Demon Master Palace was high and mighty, so they didn't dare to offend her. Now that the world has changed, he no longer had such concerns. Even if he couldn't really get her, he could still take advantage of this opportunity to satisfy his cravings. Jin Bingyun saw it clearly. She clenched her teeth and used the stimulation from the pain to clear her mind for a moment. She was about to stab back with her sword, but her reaction speed was much slower after being poisoned. Nimixing easily deflected her sword. Am I going to be humiliated by this despicable person today? Jin Bingyun was shocked and angry, but she had no other choice. Nimixing saw that his hand was about to grab the girl's breasts when he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his wrist. He was stunned at first, and then he watched as half of his wrist fell to the ground. Only then did he react and roll on the ground in pain. He originally lost a leg from the soul-freezing silver needle, and now his hand was broken, so was his entire body. He was completely crippled. Why don't you stay in India and drink the water of the Ganges River? Why must you come thousands of miles away to stir up trouble? A tall and straight figure supported the tottering Jin Bingyun, coldly looking at the wailing Nimixing on the ground. Jin Bingyun blinked her eyes in disbelief. Was she dreaming? Why would she meet this fellow in Gaoli? Jin Ji and Yun and Jin and S Li and Jin. However, the most powerful person in Gaoli, Fu Kalin, was already dead. The bright sword pavilion had also been destroyed. How could there be any other experts? Humph. Jin Bingyun and Inkashi's weapons were broken, and Fu Kalin, the most powerful person in Jin, was dead, and the bright sword pavilion was destroyed. A cold snort resounded. The imagined scene of the opponent's muscles and bones breaking did not appear. Instead, the weapons in Xiaoxiang Zi's and Inkashi's hands broke into several pieces. Then, the two of them spat out mouthfuls of blood and flew upside down, no longer breathing. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, and Jinluan Fuang saw the person's face clearly. He was shocked. Song Qinshu, why are you here? If you can be here, why can't I? Song Qinshu smiled, and looked at Jin Bingyun, who was in his arms. Miss Jin, we meet again. It's really you. Jin Bingyun blushed, and no one knew if it was because she was poisoned or because she was shy. Wait a minute, I still have something to deal with. Song Qinshu noticed that Dan Yuru's situation was not looking good, and wanted to go over to help, but he also noticed that Jin Bingyun was poisoned, and her body was weak. Naturally, he did not feel at ease leaving her here. Therefore, he held her waist with one hand, and the two of them flew in front of Dan Yuru. Then, sword chi swept out, and the Mongolian warriors surrounding her were all killed. Leader Dan, fortunately, I'm not late. Prince Song. Dan Yuru was overjoyed to see him, but when she noticed that he was carrying Jin Bingyun, she could not help but feel jealous. She's poisoned, help me take care of her. Song Qinshu noticed that Xiao Long Nu and the rest were unstoppable in the beginning, but as Jinluan Fuang returned to defend, they were gradually surrounded by Boyun's experts. Although these Mongolian warriors did not have names, their skills were enough to make them the sect leader of a mid-tier sect. Otherwise, Dan Yuru and the rest would not have been besieged to such a sorry state. In addition, the Mongolian army cooperated very well, and even with the martial arts of Xiao Long Nu and the rest, they were having a hard time. In fact, it was easy to understand. If the leader of an army was so easily beheaded by experts, how could he be called a famous general? Noticing that Boyun's order was well organized, and that waves of soldiers were surrounding the women, he did not dare to delay any longer, and he directly leaped into the air. Million returning swords. Now that the battlefield was full of weapons, it was the perfect place to use this technique. Actually, Million returning swords was not very useful against a great grandmaster, as its power was too scattered. However, the reason why it could be ranked as one of the two ultimate techniques alongside 23 swords was because of its strong ability to attack group. On the battlefield or in a chaotic battle, it was a sharp weapon that could harvest the entire battlefield. Countless swords and sabers floated in the air and surrounded him, as if forming a pair of huge steel wings. As he moved, those flying swords and sabers turned anyone who dared to stand in his way into a cloud of blood mist. Originally, there were hundreds of Mongolian experts and thousands of Mongolian soldiers in the general's residence, but they were forcefully defeated by the flying swords that filled the sky. They covered their heads and fled in terror. Unlike the other girls who knew of Song Qinshu's martial arts, this was the first time the Fu sisters were witnessing it. Their eyes widened as they stared at the figure in mid-air and the swords that filled the sky. Shock and admiration filled their eyes. Even if Master was still alive, he wouldn't be able to suppress the entire battlefield when faced with so many Mongolian warriors. Fu Junyi secretly compared Song Qinshu to her master and quickly came to a conclusion. Fu Junyu, on the other hand, grabbed her hand excitedly. Sister, he's even more powerful than the rumors say. Wow, he's so handsome, I'm almost falling in love with him. Fu Junyi rolled her eyes. You're really easy to fall in love with someone else. Who was the one who couldn't get over Jia Baoyu? That's not the same. Jia Baoyu's feelings are those of helping each other through difficult times, but this person's feelings are those of admiration for the strong. Fu Junyu bit her lip. He's really too handsome. Fu Junyi could actually understand her sister's infatuated look. Even she was quite stunned by the scene in front of her. This man was really very handsome, but she still had some sense left in her. She noticed Jean Renjun, who was fleeing to the side, and quickly leapt up. She placed her sword across his neck. I didn't think that you'd be here too. I really didn't waste any time. Song Qingshu had already landed in front of Bian. Jinluan Fuang wanted to stop him, but a ray of sword energy cut the golden wheel in his hand into two. He spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. He couldn't help but be shocked. Is the difference between me and a grandmaster this big? Song Qingshu said calmly, Jinluan Fuang, you're already heavily injured. I know that you're not like Xiao Xiangzi and the others. You have a good character, so I won't take your life. Go back to Tantric Buddhism and pay your respects to Buddha. Don't step into Jianghu ever again. Jinluan Fuang crawled up and bowed. Thank you, almsgiver Song, for fulfilling my wish. He turned around and staggered away. He had long been disheartened by this battle. He no longer had any desire to fight for supremacy in Jianghu. After dealing with Jinluan Fuang, he looked at Bai Zizai. Master Bai, from now on, surrender to me. I'll let bygones be bygones. Bai Zizai laughed. Although my martial arts aren't as good as yours, I'm not a coward who's afraid of death. If you want to kill me, then kill me. Song Qingshu sighed. To be honest, your Snow Mountain sect isn't worth my time. But I'm good friends with Xiao, and you're her grandfather. That's why I'm giving you a chance. Xiao? Bai Zizai was stunned. He couldn't help but stare at him. You bullied Xiao? Song Qingshu was speechless. What are you thinking? We're just friends. You have to think this through. Goryeo is thousands of miles away from the Snow Mountain sect. If you die here, Xiao will lose her grandfather, father, and martial uncles. She'll be very sad. Bai Zizai's face turned green and white. In the end, he said dejectedly, fine. For Xiao's sake, we'll surrender. But you have to promise to move the Snow Mountain sect to the Central Plains as soon as possible. Otherwise, we won't be able to withstand the Mongolians' revenge. Song Qingshu laughed. Don't worry. The Mongolians have run out of luck this time. They won't have the strength to retaliate against you in the future. He remembered that not long after he arrived in this world, it was the Snow Mountain sect that came to break him out of the prison in Jingzhou City. He didn't expect that time would pass so quickly. After subduing the Snow Mountain sect, Song Qingshu looked at Bian and Lu Bingzhong. The two of them were separated by Xiaolong Nu, who was standing in the middle with a sword in each hand. He looked at her holding the sword with both hands, which made her look even more graceful. He recalled the way she hugged him in the cave and the way she looked at him. For a moment, he couldn't help but feel love for her. Humph, Song, you openly oppose the Mongolians. Have you thought about the consequences? Bian was a famous general after all. Even though he was captured, he didn't show the slightest bit of fear. This time, I'm here to settle the score with the Mongolians. Why would I be afraid of your threats? Song Qingshu smiled. Lu Bingzhong's expression changed. You're planning to attack the Mongolian army at sea. Song Qingshu was surprised. You're indeed the most capable subordinate of Kublai. You were able to guess my plan with just a few words. I'm impressed. Your plan won't succeed. Chapter 25-25. Song Qingshu was shocked. Pangban was dead? He wanted to ask, but Jin Bingyun had already fainted because of being poisoned and being too excited. He hurriedly used his power and massaged the vital acupoints on her back, forcing the poison out of her body bit by bit. An hour later, Jin Bingyun finally woke up slowly. Sensing the majestic true qi in her body, she immediately knew that the other party was helping to force the poison out. She said in a low voice, "Thank you." Song Qingshu replied, "The poison in your body has been almost forced out. Although Xiaoxiangzi's poison is powerful, fortunately it is not the kind of poison that kills the throat. Otherwise, I'm afraid you would have died." Jean Bingyan sighed. It's not a bad ending to see Master after dying. What happened to Pang Ban? Song Qingshu finally couldn't help but ask. Jean Bingyan slowly replied. At that time, Brother Ali died in a strange way. In addition, Fu Kalin also died mysteriously. Master had fought with Fu Kalin before, so he was very clear about Fu Kalin's martial arts. He knew that even if he was seriously injured, he was not someone an ordinary master could kill. Combining all the reasons, he suspected that there was a great master hiding in the dark. These days, he has been investigating this matter. Later, one day, he said that he went out to see someone and never came back. Song Qingshu couldn't help but say, this can only mean that he is missing. Why do you think he is dead? The whereabouts of a great master are always erratic, so it is normal to not be found for a period of time. Jean Bingyan slowly shook her head. I know that something must have happened to him. I have been searching along the path he took that day, and finally found his body under a cliff. Before she finished speaking, tears streamed down her face. Song Qingshu exclaimed, can you see how he died? At first, he even suspected that Pang Ban was faking his death, in order to practice the Tao Heart Seed Demon, but the body was found, and it was obviously cold. Jean Bingyan replied, it's very cold here in Korea, and it's been snowing for those days, so when I found his body that day, it was still in good condition. However, I couldn't see any external injuries. Someone must have severely injured his heart meridian and killed him. Song Qingshu was taken aback. With the evil master's cultivation, even though he and Fu Kalin were both injured, he is still not someone that ordinary experts can deal with. Not to mention ordinary experts, even a few Grandmaster experts might not be able to deal with an injured great Grandmaster. Yes, so Master's suspicion back then was reasonable. There is indeed a great Grandmaster hiding in the dark, Jean Bingyan said. Song Qingshu couldn't help but say, didn't you suspect me when you saw that I was also in Korea? Jean Bingyan glanced at him and shook her head. Given Prince Song's character, he would naturally not do such a thing. If you really want to deal with my master, you can come to him directly. Song Qingshu sighed. I didn't expect you to have such a high opinion of me. Jean Bingyan blushed slightly and hurriedly changed the topic. Oh right, I also discovered something strange. What? Song Qingshu asked. My master's cultivation technique allows his skin to be as translucent as jade. Even if he passes away, it should not rot for 3 months. However, when I found my master's body last time, I found that his skin was no longer as translucent as it usually was. Instead, it had become shriveled and dull. Not only that, Jean Bingyan continued, my master's long, pitch-black hair is something that even I envy, but this time, I found that some of his hair had turned a little white. Star-absorbing great technique. Song Qingshu blurted out. What? Jean Bingyan frowned. I have heard of the star-absorbing great technique, but forgive me for being blunt. With the Ren sect leader's cultivation, I'm afraid it would be very difficult for him to use this technique on my master. Song Qingshu shook his head. It's not sect leader Ren. It's another person, venerated Ming Zhang Wuji. It was difficult to explain to her about venerated Ming's possession, so he simply told her about both of them together. At the same time, he also told her about how venerated Ming had plotted against Tongtian Shaman. He really didn't expect that when he gave the star-absorbing great technique to venerated Ming to dissolve the innate sword qi in his body, he actually didn't have any good intentions. Firstly, it was to dissolve the vast and majestic 9-yang genuine qi in his body. Secondly, it was to tamper with the incantation so that venerated Ming wouldn't be able to do human things again. Who knew that venerated Ming would play with this incomplete version of the star-absorbing great technique? First, he had absorbed Tongtian Shaman's inner energy, and now he had absorbed Pang Ban's inner energy as well. Moreover, Fu Kalin's mysterious death was most likely also absorbed by him. In total, He had absorbed the inner energy of 3 great grandmasters. In addition to the inner energy of the experts he had absorbed previously, how terrifying was the current venerated Ming's inner energy. It's actually him. After listening to his story, Jean Bingyun bit her lips so hard that it almost bled. Song Qingshu hurriedly said, "Miss Jean, don't be rash and think about revenge. With his current cultivation, even a great grandmaster would be in danger, let alone you. But since I was young, it was Master who raised me up and taught me martial arts. I owe him a great debt of gratitude. If I don't take revenge, how can I face him?" Jean Bingyun gripped her sword tightly, but she also understood that her chances of revenge were too slim. Song Qingshu couldn't help but curse silently. This Pang Ban was a lullican. He raised a female disciple and ended up falling in love with her. He even planned to use her as a demonic medium to refine his Taoist heart. There was also the green slave attribute. For this period of time, you will stay by my side. Leave venerated Ming to me. Song Qingshu thought about Jean Bingyun's status and popularity in the Devil's Palace. Coupled with her familiarity with Mongolia, there would be many things that would require her help in the future. Jean Bingyun was indeed startled when she heard his words. Then, a faint blush appeared on her snow-white cheeks. She said softly, "As long as young master can help me take revenge, I will listen to young master's orders from now on." Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, "Miss Jean, you have misunderstood. I am not taking advantage of you, and it is not mainly to take revenge for you. It is because venerated Ming and I have an irreconcilable hatred. In the end, there will definitely be a battle. If you stay by my side, you can help me a little. This is called taking what we need. You don't have to be grateful for this." Jean Bingyun's beautiful starry eyes looked at him quietly. Gradually, there was something different in her eyes. "Prince Song, you really are a gentleman." Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. Many people will laugh if they hear this. How can I be considered a gentleman? Jean Bingyun shook her head. "No, it is just that those people misunderstood you." Song Qingshu laughed. "All right, to be able to receive such an evaluation from Miss Jean is enough to make me happy. Your poison is more or less neutralized. Have a good rest first. I still have to go out and deal with the mess outside." Just as he was about to get up, he was held back by Jean Bingyun. He couldn't help but be stunned. His gaze fell on her snow-white wrist. Jean Bingyun pursed her lips and said softly, "I still have one more thing to ask you. Miss Jean, please speak. Are you confident that you can defeat venerated Ming?" Song Qingshu thought for a moment and said, "Originally, I was very confident. However, after knowing that he had absorbed the powers of 3 great grandmasters, I am also a little uncertain." Jean Bingyun was even less confident. In her opinion, Song Qingshu had almost died when he had faced 3 great grandmasters in Helen City. Now that venerated Ming had combined the powers of 4 great grandmasters into one, how could he possibly win by himself? Her face alternated between red and white. It was obvious that she had experienced an intense psychological struggle. She then said, "Prince Song, do you know about the Great Heart Seed Demon technique?" Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. "Of course I know. That's why I was very wary of you before. It's mainly because you are too beautiful. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to control myself." Jean Bingyun's face turned red. It was obvious that she was also a little embarrassed. She continued to say, "Actually, people only know about the Tao Heartseed Demon technique. However, they don't know that there is also the Demon Heartseed Demon technique. The former is to use the other party as a furnace and absorb all of the other party's powers and essence for one's own use. The latter is to use oneself as a furnace and contribute one's powers and essence to the other party. It's just that most people in the Sacred Gate are selfish. For thousands of years, no one would do something like this to benefit others." Song Qingshu was stunned. "Why are you telling me this, Miss Jean? Now that the Devil Master is dead, all of this is gone, isn't it? Jean Bingyun's face turned even redder. Although the honored master has passed away, the demon seed that I have been cultivating for over 10 years is still there. I can use the second method, to transform it into a Tao embryo and give it to you. Although it can't reach the level of giving you all of the Devil Master's powers, it is enough to greatly increase the level of your powers. At that time, you will have more confidence in dealing with revered Ming. Song Qingshu was suddenly enlightened, and a faint smile appeared on his face. How should I give this embryo of Tao to him? Jean Bingyun took a deep breath. Suddenly, she untied her belt with her slender hands. Her long dress slid down from her smooth and snow-white skin as if there was nothing holding it back. It revealed the body of the saint lady that countless people in Mongolia yearned for day and night. Then, she slowly walked up to him with a red face. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. A playful look appeared in Song Qingshu's eyes. He could have pushed her away, but after thinking about it, he decided not to. He wanted to use this matter to verify whether what she said was true or not. Regardless of whether Pang Ban was dead or revered Ming had used the absorbing star's great technique to absorb his powers, these were just Jean Bingyun's one-sided story. Without seeing Pang Ban's corpse with his own eyes, he had enough reason to suspect that this was a trap set up by Pang Ban. Because he knew about the existence of the Tao Heart Demon Seed, under normal circumstances, the plan of the honored master and his disciple would not succeed. Therefore, it was indeed easier for them to use this trick to lure him into the trap. If Pang Ban was really hiding in the dark, it would be troublesome. An enemy who was hiding in the dark was much more dangerous than an enemy who was out in the open. Right now, Song Qingshu had to deal with the Mongolian fleet. He did not have the time and energy to investigate this matter. The best way was to jump into their trap. After the two of them merged their spiritual desires, he would be able to find out whether Jean Bingyun was lying to him. As for the danger of his Tao heart becoming a demon, he did not care about it at all. After all, the demon sect had always wanted to break through the void and become an immortal. The Tao Heart Demon Seed was just one of the experiments. How could it compare to the Plain Lady Sutra that was personally taught by a real immortal? At that time, if Pang Ban really wanted to use this technique to absorb all of his powers, it was hard to say who would be the one to absorb who. Therefore, when Jean Bingyun threw herself into his arms, Song Qingshu did not reject her. He directly wrapped his arms around her soft and smooth waist and pulled her into his arms. Jean Bingyun's heart raced, but she endured it. She followed the records of the demon sect's secret manual and completely offered her body to him. With a soft cry, the two of them became one. Song Qingshu noticed that Jean Bingyun's body was much colder than a normal woman's. Xiaolong Nu's skin was usually cold enough, but the inside of her body was still warm, while Jean Bingyun's body was cold from the outside to the inside. If it were a normal man, he might not be able to take it anymore and hand over his spear and surrender. But right now, Song Qingshu was not a normal man. Soon, he felt wisps of coolness enter his body from her body. He could clearly feel all the meridians in his body seemed to be cheering. Even though the effect was not as good as when he was with the Empyrean fairy, it could still be said to be outstanding. After some time, he felt that there was no longer a trace of coolness in Jean Bingyun's body, and her whole body became hotter and hotter. He finally understood that she did not lie to him. Apart from feeling guilty, his actions also became much gentler and more loving. After some time, Jean Bingyun, whose eyes were filled with tears, used great strength to support her limp body from his arms. She blushed and said in a trembling voice, "We've been inside for too long. There are so many people waiting outside. It's not good for us." Song Qingshu felt that the zhenqi in his body had become more majestic. He knew that it was the effect of her Taoist fetus's nourishment. He could not help but feel pity for her. He kissed her gently and said, "I'll come to find you at night." Jean Bingyun grunted. All these years, her body had been very cold. It had never been as warm and comfortable as it was just now. There was even a moment when she felt that she had lived all these years in vain. As a result, she, who had always been cold, also looked forward to the night. After that, Song Qinshu went out to clean up the mess. The leaders, Bian, Lu Bingzhong, and Jin Rinjun, were captured. The Mongolian soldiers in Kaijing and the Goryeo puppet army were like dragons without a leader. They were quickly controlled. After that, Song Qinshu directly used the soul transfer technique to interrogate Bian and Lu Bingzhong about some Mongolian military and political secret. He had a clear understanding of the Mongolian military movements. Not long after, Ajiu and the others arrived with the Allied fleet. With this new force, together with the Fu sisters and Yi Sunshin, they quickly controlled the entire territory of Goryeo. The next step was to use the navy to blockade the Strait of Tsushima and the waters of Japan, completely cutting off the route of retreat of the Mongolian army. I've said this before on the official account, but I don't know if I've said it in the main text. Because some of the unimportant female characters are not suitable to appear in the current plot, I'll add some side chapters for them on the official account after the end of the novel. Other popular characters will definitely have their own side chapters, so don't feel disappointed that you didn't see some people in the finale. Next, I'll announce the official account, Monk Lu Ru. Those who haven't added, you can add them. Chapter 25-26. They sent out all sorts of scouts and gradually learned about the situation of the Mongolian expedition to Dongying. It turned out that the Mongolians had landed twice. During the first landing, they were fiercely blocked by Dongying. This was because Dongying had just experienced the Warring States period of 100 years and Toyosi Hideyoshi had unified the country. In terms of combat power, both the quality of the generals and the combat power of the soldiers were quite elite. In the beginning, they waited for the enemy to exhaust themselves and built a very stable line of defense. The Mongolian and Goryeo allied forces suffered heavy losses during the first landing. Even the imperial tutor, Basiba, died in the chaos. However, this time, the Mongolians came in full force, and with the help of the Goryeo navy, they regrouped and started the second landing. After paying a heavy price, they finally succeeded. Once they got ashore, the advantage of the Mongolian cavalry was displayed. The Dongying army that was fighting evenly finally couldn't hold on any longer and started to retreat. Toyosi Hideyoshi's main force was repeatedly attacked by the Mongolian cavalry and finally couldn't hold on any longer and was completely defeated. In the next few days, the two sides engaged in a series of battles. Toyosi Hideyoshi's main force was completely wiped out, and even he himself died on the battlefield. Dongying had just experienced 100 years of war. After Toyosi Hideyoshi unified the country, the internal situation was already quite unstable. Now that he was dead and his main force was almost wiped out, the other ambitious people naturally couldn't hold back and all betrayed the Toyosi family. Among them, Oda Nobunaga was the most influential. Oda Nobunaga contacted the Mongols and surrendered to them. At this time, the Mongols also knew about the changes in Korea and did not have the energy to slowly conquer Japan. Thus, they agreed to Oda Nobunaga's surrender and supported him as the spokesperson of the Mongols in Japan. Kublai led the Mongolian main force back to Goryeo. Unfortunately, Song Qinshu had already taken control of all of Goryeo. He led various allied naval forces to block the Mongolian fleet at the Strait of Tsushima, preventing them from breaking through the blockade and getting close to land. Of course, the Mongolian army was huge, and with the help of Oda Nobunaga and the Japanese navy, it was difficult for Song Qinshu to defeat them. The situation became very tense. During this period of time, Song Qinshu had been waiting for Huang Yaoshe to observe the wind. Finally, Huang Yaoshe predicted that there would be a storm one day, so Song Qinshu calculated the time and retreated the fleet in advance. The Mongolian army saw that the blockade that had been bothering them for many days was gone and were overjoyed. They rushed towards Goryeo, afraid that Song Qingshu's fleet would suddenly appear. It had to be pointed out that Song Qingshu almost couldn't handle the storm even though he was a grandmaster, let alone these normal people of the Mongolian army who couldn't even swim. After the storm that had been like this for decades, all of the Mongolian battleships either hit the rocks or sunk. Some of them were stranded near the shore, and the vast army had completely disappeared. Only a few of the high-ranking generals' ships managed to get on land. Unfortunately, as soon as they got on land, they were surrounded by Song Qingshu's army that had been lying in ambush. Both sides engaged in an intense battle. Song Qingshu led his people and charged towards Kublai and the other leaders. At this point, he didn't want to let any of them escape. However, the strength of Kublai's personal army was not to be underestimated. In addition, there was a large group of experts accompanying them, so they were still very strong. Therefore, Song Qingshu had to personally deal with them. During this period of time, Song Qingshu had already recognized the experts by Kublai's side. They were all old acquaintances. There was the Tantric sex expert led by Yang Lianjun, the 12 treasure tree kings led by the old man in the mountain, the leader of the Vajra sect and Taoist Baisang who had joined them from the Ruyang Palace were also there. The Xianming elders seemed to have already died at the bottom of the sea, and there were also some Japanese warriors. At this moment, the group of people had already been forced into a dead end. Kublai said angrily, "Song, how dare you sneak attack the Mongolian army? Aren't you afraid of our revenge?" Song Qingshu smiled slightly. After this battle, the Mongolian army has already lost more than half of its main force. How can it still be strong? The faces of the Mongolians all darkened, but they all knew that what he said was the truth. Song Qingshu looked at the old man in the mountain and asked curiously, "Huashan, where did venerated Ming go? How come I haven't seen him?" Huashan said coldly, "What venerated Ming? I don't know what you're talking about." Song Qingshu frowned. He didn't know if Huashan was worried that the Mongolians would find out about venerated Ming's identity, or if he was trying to hide it from him. Venerated Ming hiding in the dark was quite troublesome. But now, he could only deal with Kublai's group first. He looked at the people in the mountain and said, "Kublai, I respect you as a hero. If you choose to commit suicide, I can let you die without bleeding." The Mongolians had a tradition. If they bled when they died, they wouldn't be able to enter the reincarnation cycle. Therefore, when they treated enemies that were worthy of respect, they would let them die without bleeding. Kublai laughed. The Mongolians never surrender. If you want to fight, then fight. Why do you have to talk so much? If that's the case, then don't blame me for being merciless. Song Qingshu calmly said. He waved his hand and gave the order to attack, while he directly headed towards Kublai. The Mongolian warriors along the way couldn't even take one hit from him. Just as he was about to reach Kublai, 2 sharp sword energies suddenly came from the side, one in front of the other behind him. The timing was perfect, the angle was tricky, and the coordination was perfect. It really was hard to defend against. Grandmaster! Many people on Song Qingshu's side cried out in shock. They didn't expect that there would suddenly be grandmasters among the Japanese warriors, and 2 of them at that. Previously, these people had been fighting for so long, but they hadn't shown any of them. Song Qingshu's expression was also solemn. He flicked his finger and waved his sleeve, finally dodging the attack by a hair's breadth. Once he landed, he looked at his sleeve that had been cut open and looked at the 2 Japanese experts. Wizumi Tsunenobu, Tsukasahara Buchuan? The Shueiwa sect was ranked 3rd among the Japanese experts, and there were 2 people above him. They were the 2 famous sword saints in Japanese history, Wizumi Tsunenobu and Tsukasahara Buchuan. The 2 people in front of him were completely Japanese, and their sword techniques were so high. Who else could it be other than them? Sir, you actually know our names. Wizumi Tsunenobu was a little surprised. On the other side, Tsukasahara Buchuan said, You were able to escape from Wizumi and my sneak attack. As expected of the strongest person in China. The Japanese were deeply influenced by Chinese culture, and people in the upper echelons like them were proficient in sinology, so they had no problem communicating. Song Qinshu smiled slightly. I'm surprised that you were able to sneak attack us so openly. Wizumi Tsunenobu sighed. Given our identities, we usually don't want to join forces to fight against enemies, let alone sneak attack. However, we have no choice now. I hope you can forgive us. Not far away, Kubilai laughed out loud. You didn't expect this, did you? Song Qinshu, how does it feel like the hunter has become the prey? I'm afraid it won't be so easy to change who is the hunter and who is the prey. Although Song Qinshu said this, he couldn't help but admire Kubilai. As expected of a formidable person, he was actually able to set up such a killing trap in such a hurry despite being at an absolute disadvantage. One must know that he didn't let the two sword saints reveal their strength in the previous battle. He used himself as bait to lure Song Qinshu into the trap. Humph, sword saints, as long as you successfully kill him, I'll let all the Japanese return. Moreover, Mongolia will be on good terms with Japan for generations to come. At the same time, I'll give Korea to Japan, Kubilai said in a low voice. The two sword saints' eyes lit up. They then looked at Song Qinshu. Song-san, sorry. No matter if it was for the country or for the people, they had to give it their all this time. The two of them attacked Song Qinshu from the left and right. At that moment, something strange happened. Sect Master Vajra and Taoist priest Baishang suddenly turned around and killed Kubilai's personal guards. They held on to Kubilai from both sides and laughed loudly. Prince Song, we've done you such a great service this time. How are you going to repay us? The two of them had been poisoned by Song Qinshu's 3-corpse brain divine pill, so they had been looking for a chance to turn around. Now they finally found the perfect opportunity. Kubilai's guards were extremely weak. Unfortunately, before Song Qinshu could reply, Sect Master Vajra felt an intense pain in his chest. He looked down in shock and found that his indestructible body had been pierced by Kubilai's hand. Chapter 25-27. So it's you, venerated Ming. Song Qinshu finally understood why he hadn't seen venerated Ming for a long time and why the old man from the mountain was with Kubilai. So venerated Ming had become Kubilai. Previously, he was wondering why Jinluan Fuang, Nimiksing, and the other experts that Kubilai trusted for a long time would stay in Goryeo and not take them with him. He was probably worried that these people who knew him would notice the change in Kubilai. Also, the Mongolian imperial tutor Basiba had died during the invasion of Dongying. At the time, he thought that it was because the battle was too intense, but now that he thought about it, venerated Ming must have played a part in it. After all, Basiba and the others were highly respected in Mongolia and were very familiar with Kubilai and the other higher-up. Even though they were enemies, Song Qinshu admired venerated Ming. He had stirred up a storm in Mongolia all by himself and had actually succeeded in replacing Kubilai. There were many powerful Mongolians, including quite a few grandmasters. In the end, Song Qinshu managed to get rid of all the obstacles in his way. Now that he had successfully taken over Kubilai, and with the deaths of Temujin and Alibuj, he should be able to succeed to the position of Great Khan. If it wasn't for him, venerated Ming would have succeeded already. Song Qinshu had thought that it was already shocking enough for him to replace Kangxi, but compared to revered Ming, it was nothing. In all fairness, the difficulty of him replacing Kangxi was far less than the difficulty of revered Ming seizing the foundation of Mongolia. But now that he had taken over Kubilai, he had obviously given up on Zhang Wuji's body. Where was Zhang Wuji now? Was he dead or in a vegetative state? Or would he regain consciousness? He suddenly felt lucky that he had given Priest Baishan and leader Jean Gang the 3 corpses brain pill. If they hadn't betrayed him, he would have been the one to be killed when he approached Kublai unprepared. In just a short period of time, venerated Ming had already sucked Taoist priest 100 damages dry. He tossed the corpses of Taoist priest 100 damages and sect master Vajra on the ground. When he looked at Song Qingshu, his eyes were filled with rage. Song, you're really my lifelong enemy. You've already ruined my plans in the Chinese plains, and this time, when I finally succeeded in my plans in Mongolia, everything was ruined because of you. How could he not be angry? After all, he had ambushed the Tongtian shaman and had secretly gotten rid of Temujin's trusted aides. In Goryeo, he had used the Grand Master Kai Lin to get rid of the last obstacle to the Mongolians, the evil Master Pangban. He had seen him conquer Dong Ing under the new identity of Kublai. When he returned to Mongolia, he would be the ruler of the world. Who would have thought that their main force would be annihilated by Song Qingshu at the Strait of Tsushima? More importantly, his identity had been exposed. He had already noticed that many Mongolian warriors were looking at him with bewilderment in their eyes. Only the old man of the mountain and the many precious tree kings under his command could be considered reliable. Humph, in for a penny, in for a pound, in for a pound, in for a pound. All the Mongolians here have to die, and there aren't many of them left anyway. As for the people on Song Qingshu's side, the Mongolian headquarters might not believe their words. Right now, Song Qingshu didn't have time to reply because he realized a serious problem. Now that venerated Ming had absorbed the power of 3 grandmasters, his inner force must have become terrifying. More importantly, there were also 2 Japanese sword saints. If he wasn't careful, he might turn from the hunter to the hunted. Therefore, he had to get rid of these 2 Japanese sword saints as soon as possible so that they wouldn't have the chance to form a joint attack. However, be it Wizumi Shinsuna or Tsukasa Suzuhara, although they couldn't compare to Temujin or the sweeper monk, they were all grandmasters. Moreover, Japanese martial arts had their own style, and their swordsmanship was unpredictable. For a moment, Song Qingshu didn't know what to do. At this moment, venerated Ming seemed to have realized this as well. He laughed and said, Song Qingshu, although my army has been wiped out by you this time, as long as I can kill you, the world will be mine. After saying that, he flew over, planning to join forces with the 2 Japanese sword saints to kill Song Qingshu as soon as possible to prevent any unforeseen events from happening. At this moment, a delicate shout rang out. A green silhouette blocked his path. She held the dog-beating stick in her hand and used the entanglement formula, trying to stop him for a moment. Rong-er. Song Qingshu was shocked. Why did she suddenly appear? How could she be a match for a grandmaster? As expected, the exquisite dog-beating stick technique could not even withstand a single blow from venerated Ming. With a casual palm, he broke the dog-beating stick in her hand into 2. His other hand instantly grabbed her throat. Just as he was about to twist her neck, he suddenly saw Huang Rong's bright and beautiful face. The tender feeling of her skin came from his palm. Venerated Ming's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly felt that it was a pity to kill such a beautiful woman just like that. Previously, when he was in Zhang Wuji's body, he didn't know what was going on, but he couldn't get close to women. He had been holding it in for a long time. This time, he was willing to take the risk to take over Hu Bailey's body again because he couldn't have sex in his previous body. It was too much of a pity to kill such a beautiful woman just like that. I'll slowly enjoy her after I kill that Song Qingshu. As soon as this thought appeared, venerated Ming changed his twist to a slap. He pressed his palm on Huang Rong's shoulder. Huang Rong felt her body go limp, and then she could no longer stand and fell to the ground. Rong-er. Huang Yaosher's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He had already rushed over. First, he used the divine flicking finger to shoot at venerated Ming's acupoint. At the same time, he used the mysterious 9 turns technique. He was prepared to use this technique against the other 4 masters in the 3rd sword meet of Mount Hua. However, venerated Ming now had the power of 3 grandmasters. With a casual wave of his hand, he swept aside the pebble shot by Huang Yaoshi's divine flicking finger. Then, he used his other hand to slap Huang Yaoshi's chest. No matter what Huang Yaoshi did to block it, he couldn't stop this slap. Huang Yaoshi coughed up blood. If he hadn't experienced the Battle of Mount Wudang and learned a lot from the battle between grandmasters, this slap would have taken his life. Venerated Ming didn't have any tender feelings for the old man in front of him. Just as he was about to end Eastern Heretic's life, a cold light came from the side. Even venerated Ming had to dodge it. Good swordsmanship. Seeing Xiaolongnu's dual sword harmony attack, revered Ming secretly sighed in admiration. If it was a martial grandmaster who used the dual sword harmony, even he would have a hard time dealing with such an exquisite sword technique. However, his opponent's internal energy was far too weak. Naturally, he would not be like Jinluan Fuang and foolishly compete with his opponent's technique. Instead, he would use his internal energy to win. Amidst the flashing shadows of the sword, Xiaolongnu's palm landed on the body of his opponent's sword. Xiaolongnu let out a soft cry as she felt a huge force coming from her palm. She could no longer hold the sword in her hand and lost one of her swords. The combination of the 2 swords was broken immediately. Looking at Xiaolongnu's flawless face, revered Ming thought that this girl's beauty was no less than Zhao Min's and Zhou Jiruo's. The one with the surname Song, you stole so many of my women. This time, all your women will be mine. Venerated Ming had been using the identity of Zhang Wuji for so long that many of his ways of thinking still couldn't escape from Zhang Wuji's shadow. Just as he was about to subdue Xiaolongnu, another shout came from behind him. Another sword aura pierced towards him. Venerated Ming turned around and saw who it was. He couldn't help but laugh. Lady Jean, I thought it was a pity that I let you escape. I didn't think that you would come to me on your own. Jean Bingyun's face was full of anger. Venerated Ming, you plotted against my teacher. Today, I will take revenge for him. Venerated Ming laughed. Pang Ban has been cultivating his Tao heart for a long time. He carefully cultivated a demonic medium like you. It's a pity that he didn't have the chance to enjoy you. Now that I look at it, it was all for me. Not only did he give me his vast power, he also gave me his beloved woman. Speaking of which, I'm really embarrassed. Shameless. Even though Jean Bingyun's heart was cold, she was so angry that her face turned red. She unleashed 120% of the martial arts that Pang Ban had taught her. However, it was a pity that revered Ming had already grabbed her wrist and was about to press on the soft acupoint on her waist. Give me back my teacher's life. At this moment, the Fu sisters stabbed towards him from the left and right. They were all great grandmasters. Even though their power was still lacking, their attainments in martial arts far surpassed that of ordinary people. The Fu sisters attacked hatefully. Their coordination was impeccable, and they unleashed the power of the bright sword technique to its fullest. Venerated Ming could only temporarily give up on taking advantage of Jean Bingyun. Instead, he used the heaven and earth great shift to change the direction of the Fu sisters' swords, causing them to stab towards each other. Of course, he purposely held back. He didn't let the 2 ladies' swords point at each other's vital parts. After all, be it Fu Junyi or Fu Junyu, they were all 1 in a million beauties. They were the national treasures of the entire Gaoli country. Looks like the heavens are trying to make up for my hardships of being a vegetarian all these years. They've sent me so many beauties at once. Ha ha ha, I want all of them. The Fu sisters were all injured. At this moment, Jiu and Xia Qingqing also rushed over with their swords in hand. The 2 ladies' martial arts were not bad, and they often dual cultivated with Song Qinshu and received his guidance. Especially Agio, her current combat power was not inferior to that of a grandmaster. At this moment, Xiaolong Nu picked up a new sword and rushed over. Together with the Heaven's Fate cult's leader, Dan Yuru and Jin Bingyun, who had regained her senses, even the Fu sisters continued to attack. Venerated Ming couldn't help but be shocked and angry. Actually, with his skills, it wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with these women. However, these women's martial arts were not weak. It would take some time to completely subdue them. It would be troublesome if Song Qinshu was freed up. What is this bastard Huashan doing? Why isn't he coming over to help? Venerated Ming scanned the battlefield from the corner of his eyes. He was shocked to find that Huashan and the 12 precious tree kings were being cut up by a yellow-robed woman with green feathers. They had fallen into a predicament of fighting their own battles. How could they find the time to help him? How could he not recognize Huaqintong? He was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. In his heart, Huaqintong was his fiancée. Although he hadn't heard from her recently, why did she run over to help another man to deal with him? On the other side, Song Qingshu's face was as dark as still water. He was very clear about the situation over there, but he also knew that it was useless to worry. The only thing he could do now was to finish off the two enemies in front of him as soon as possible. If others knew what he was thinking, they would probably think he was crazy. It had to be known that when a martial grandmaster fought two against one, it was always a sure-win situation. The one who was alone didn't have to consider how to win, but whether or not he could escape with his life. After all, even someone as powerful as the sweeping monk had fallen under the joint attack of patriarchs Sunflower and Lin Chowing. Right now, the two Japanese sword sages were obviously thinking the same thing. Wizumi Shinsuna said, "Song-san, you're the person with the best martial arts we've ever seen in our lives. You're actually not at a disadvantage, even under the joint attack of me and Mizuhara. It's really admirable." Mizuhara Busuchuan nodded and said, "That's right. All these years, when Wizumi and I were in Japan, almost no one was qualified to make us use a second move, let alone the two of us joining forces." Song Qingshu snorted coldly, "Don't talk so much nonsense. If you want to fight, then hurry up and fight. Is that all you're capable of? To think that you're qualified to be called sword sages with such sloppy and ordinary sword technique. It can be seen that the Japanese are really lacking in talent." The two of them were stunned and said angrily, "We respect you as a hero. Since that's the case, we'll use our strongest move to send you on your way." Serene style, one flash. Wizumi Shinsuna jumped out of the battle while Mizuhara Busuchuan was holding his opponent back. He held his sword with both hands, and his aura suddenly changed. Serenine's style had three ultimate moves: the Killing Blade, the Living Sword, and the Bladeless Takedown. However, regardless of whether it was the Living Sword or the Bladeless Takedown, it was usually used to crush other experts. Against a Grandmaster, one still had to rely on his Killing Blade. His figure suddenly became blurry. Then, 1 became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. The split figures surrounded Song Qinshu in the center, forming a circle. Huaqintong, who was commanding the troops not far away, had a change in expression because she could feel that the other party's figure was not an illusion, but a real existence. She did not know how he did it. One sword sage was already so powerful. Now that there were so many sword sages, how could Brother Song deal with them? The Serene style's Killing Blade really lives up to its name. Mizuhara Busuchuan muttered, "Let this arrogant guy from the Central Plains witness the ultimate move of our Serene style. Secret Sword First Tachi." With a leap, he descended from the sky. The sword in his hand instantly turned into countless sword shadows. It was like a torrential rain, but also like the sun shining, making it impossible for anyone to dodge. Wizumi Shinsuna's ultimate move attacked from all directions, while Mizuhara Busuchuan's ultimate move sealed the only exit from the sky. Seeing that Song Qinshu was about to fall before the two's powerful ultimate moves, the people not far away were all shocked. Song Qinshu sighed. Wouldn't it have been better if you had used your full strength earlier? The two opponents were two grandmasters, both of whom had experienced hundreds of battles and had rich combat experience. If they were to fight seriously, it would take dozens or even hundreds of moves to determine the victor. However, he was worried about the safety of the women, so how could he wait that long? Therefore, he had deliberately provoked them with words. Originally, the two sword sages would not fall for such a provocation so easily. However, the other party had directly escalated to the point of looking down on the Japanese pugilistic world, and the Japanese could be said to have a love-hate relationship with the Central Plains. Therefore, the two of them fell for the trap. When they felt that the time was right, they joined forces to use their full strength, wanting to clear the name of the Japanese pugilistic world. Suddenly, a shocking sword chi rose in the field. A sword chi that was dozens of meters long soared into the sky, and the sword chi in the two's hands instantly dimmed. The two figures fell to the ground in defeat. Song Qinshu slowly walked out and said indifferently, "Do you think you're worthy of being called sword sages?" He felt that tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow at the latest, would be the end of the battle. Chapter 25-28. On the other side, venerated Ming was surrounded by the women and had no time to cooperate with the two Japanese sword sages to deal with Song Qinshu. Although none of these women were a match for him, they worked together, causing him to be unable to attend to one thing and lose sight of the other. It was still quite troublesome to completely subdue them. The main reason was that he couldn't bear to destroy the flowers in the beginning, causing the women to have nothing to fear, causing him to be restrained instead. However, after about 10 moves, venerated Ming became ruthless. These women were beautiful, but there were many more beautiful women in the world. Putting everything else aside, more than half of Song Qinshu's close female friends weren't here. As long as I take over the world, what kind of woman can't I have? With a thought, he immediately dispelled the idea of having tender feelings for the fairer sex and decided to deal with Song Qinshu first. Therefore, he no longer showed any mercy and instantly broke the women's cooperation. Xiao Long Nu and the others all vomited blood and fell to the back. Clearly, they no longer had the strength to fight. Xia Qingqing's martial arts were slightly weaker, but she was the least injured in this round. Seeing him rushing towards Song Qinshu, although she was afraid, she still summoned her courage and blocked his path. Scram! Venerated Ming was furious and slashed towards her. Qing! Ajio was shocked and hurriedly swung his sword to save her. Venerated Ming snorted coldly and pressed his hand against the tip of his opponent's sword. Ajio's sword that could cut through iron like mud shattered like a porcelain doll. He could only watch helplessly as his opponent's terrifying palm pressed down on his head. On the other side, Xia Qingqing's golden snake sword was also broken by his palm. His opponent's palm was about to land on her chest. The two women knew that they wouldn't be able to escape and closed their eyes in resignation. It was a pity that they didn't even have time to see Brother Song for the last time. However, after a while, the pain they imagined didn't come. Instead, they fell into a warm and familiar embrace. The two women opened their eyes in disbelief and saw Song Qinshu hugging them from both sides. They both exclaimed, "Brother Song! I've made you suffer." Song Qinshu's heart was filled with regret. All these years, they hadn't been together much. Now, he actually had to pay the price with their lives to stop the enemy. He owed them too much. Not bitter at all. The two girls answered in unison, and then looked at each other, both of their pretty faces slightly red. At this moment, venerated Ming's voice rang out. He said with a dark expression, "You actually managed to deal with the two great sword saints, Suzuhara Busuchuan and Wizumi Nabatsuna, so quickly?" Although the fight with the women had seemed very troublesome, it had only lasted for about 10 breaths of time. In the end, the other party had dealt with the 2 great grandmasters so quickly. This really surprised him. With a gentle force, Song Qinshu pushed Ajio, Xia Qingqing, and the other women behind Hua Qingtong to prevent them from being in any more danger. Then, he said, if the 2 of them were great grandmasters in other fields, perhaps it would not be so easy for me to deal with them. Unfortunately, both of them use swords. To use swords in front of me. He didn't continue, but his meaning was quite obvious. Too trash. Revered Ming retracted his gaze. Although he was a little surprised, he didn't panic at all. I didn't expect your martial arts to improve so much after we parted ways in Mongolia. Same here. Song Qinshu looked at him. Your martial arts are worlds apart from when you were in Lin City. You've absorbed Devil Master Pangban, Bright Sword Master Fu Kailan, and possibly many other top-notch experts. The current you is indeed shockingly powerful. Revered Ming laughed out loud. So you should also know that although I fell for your trap this time and caused the Mongolian main force to be wiped out, you've still done all of this for me. As long as I kill you today, how can these troops here stop me? When I return to the Central Plains, your foundation will fall into my hands bit by bit. Great grandmasters were already the pinnacle of martial arts in this world. Members of the royal family, who were at the level of the 5 uniques, were powerless in the face of an army. However, unless great grandmasters were surrounded by a large number of cavalry on an open plain or in a situation where they had no choice but to fight to the death, the army would not be able to kill them. At the very least, it would be very easy for them to escape if they wanted to. Moreover, Revered Ming wasn't an ordinary great grandmaster, so he naturally had more confidence. Aren't you a little too confident? Song Qinshu smiled. Have you never thought that you would die here today? That's absolutely impossible. Revered Ming's expression turned cold. Oh well, young man, you refuse to give up until you reach the end of your rope. Today, I'll let you see what despair is. Suddenly, shrill crows' cries rose in the battlefield. Crows' cries were already very piercing and unpleasant to the ears, but at that moment, the crows' cries in the air were even stranger than actual crows. It was as if they contained some sort of magical power, and it was as if they were sounds that came from hell. The slaughter in the battlefield had long since stopped, and everyone felt their hearts tremble. They felt as if the gates to hell would open at the next moment, and countless malicious spirits would run out to claim their lives. Revered Ming spread out both of his hands. His entire body didn't move in the slightest, but he actually rose up into the air and floated in midair. Between his hands there were all sorts of black shadows. These black shadows slowly enlarged, turning into strange pitch-black crows. All of the crows gathered together and formed a pair of gigantic black wings. Revered Ming's entire body floated in midair, looking like a demonic god. Is this guy even human? An inexplicable fear rose in everyone's heart. Even the usually iron-blooded army subconsciously moved back, wanting to be as far away from this guy as possible. Is this the kung fu that you secretly learned from the Tongtian shaman? Song Qinshu had fought with the Tongtian shaman before, and at that time, he had also used a similar kung fu. Even Temujin and Pangban did not notice anything unusual. Clearly, this was the original kung fu of the Tongtian shaman. But now that Revered Ming was using it, its power was many times greater than the one He Lin used. Moreover, from it one could feel the Qian Kuan Grand Shift, the Absorbing Star's great technique, and even the kung fu of the Sacred Flame Order and Taiji Fist. Clearly, he had merged the essence of all his martial arts into one. Ha ha ha, the Tongtian shaman can communicate with the longevity heaven. Although he talks all day long, the things he studies are really amazing and have benefited me a lot. Speaking of which, I'm quite grateful to him. Revered Ming recalled the days when he had to endure hardships by the side of the Tongtian shaman, and a proud smile appeared on his face. Your way of thanking him is to suck all his power dry and then replace him? Song Qinshu laughed coldly. It's his honor to be able to contribute his power to me. Wait until you go to hell and exchange your knowledge with him. As soon as revered Ming finished speaking, he put his hands together and two huge black wings flapped forward. A strong wind suddenly started blowing, and the normal soldiers were all blown away. Although he said that he was going to deal with Song Qinshu, the countless crows on his black wings flew towards everyone present. Clearly, he didn't want anyone to live after his impersonation of Kublai was exposed. The first to suffer was the Mongolian warrior closest to him. The crows touched his body, and it instantly withered into a dried corpse. Then, more crows broke out of the corpses. Song Qinshu's eyes narrowed. He could tell that the other party must have used the principles of the great astral absorption technique, and then successfully created something that was like a virus that spread from 1 to 10, and from 10 to 100. If he was really allowed to fully display it, he might really be able to destroy an entire army by himself. He didn't dare to waste any time. His entire body spiraled into the sky and created a tornado to block the wind created by revered Ming great technique. 10,000 swords returned to origin. As revered Ming great technique spun, countless sword chi shot out from his body. The sword chi filled the sky and shot towards the flying crows. Countless black crows were nailed to the ground, and at the same time, countless sword chi were melted by the black crows in the sky. Revered Ming saw that the situation wasn't right. He waved his hands, and the black crows in the sky returned to the wings on his back. Then, they all disappeared into his body. Looks like I'll have to kill you first before dealing with the others. Song Qinshu sighed. It's not certain who'll be the one to kill who. Do you only know how to talk? Revered Ming harumphed and suddenly disappeared. Everyone else present stared with wide eyes. If one's speed was fast enough, one could indeed lose sight of one's figure for a short period of time. However, vanishing into thin air without leaving any afterimages was something no one had ever seen before. Ajio, where did revered Ming go? Xia Qingqing couldn't help but ask. Ajiu shook his head. Clearly, he didn't know either. Jean Bingyun wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and explained. Revered Ming has always been by Brother Song's side. He's attacking him from all angles. It's just that he's too fast, so it's hard to see him. Among the girls, her martial arts might not be the best. However, she had followed Devil Master Pangban since she was young, so her horizons were naturally not something an ordinary person could compare to. Although the Fu sisters were also with Fu Kalin, their cultivation levels were still much lower than hers. Hearing her explanation, everyone looked over. Sure enough, they could faintly see a strange weapon that resembled a ball of flames flashing continuously around Song Qinshu. That's the sacred flame insignia. Ajio had stayed in the Ming dynasty for a period of time, so he immediately recognized it. Why isn't Brother Song moving? Fu Junyu was worried. She couldn't help but look at Jean Bingyun. Whether it was fighting alongside her or listening to her explanation, she was already full of admiration for this woman. It's not that he's not moving. Did you guys notice that every time the sacred flame insignia attacks, it'll be blocked by a void sword chi? Jean Bingyun explained as she looked nervously at the scene. Only then did the girls come to a realization. Looking carefully, they indeed saw that invisible sword. However, their cultivation levels were too low compared to the two people in the scene, so they couldn't see anything special about it. They could only occasionally see the two weapons coming into contact. Song Qinshu seemed to be standing motionless on the spot. Sword chi surrounded him. No matter how the wind blew, he remained as still as a mountain. After the time it took for a joss stick to burn, he finally moved. His figure flashed, and he suddenly swung his fist toward the void. Immediately after, a figure suddenly appeared out of thin air. The figure was sent flying backward by his punch, leaving a trail of blood in the air. Clearly, this punch had injured him quite badly. How is this possible? Venerated Ming half knelt on the ground. The bun on his head had been messed up, and his hair was disheveled. He looked at Song Qinshu, who was not far away, with a face full of disbelief. Song Qinshu sighed. I've already said that it's hard to say who will be the one to kill who. You just didn't believe me. Impossible. I have the power of 3 great grandmasters. No, if I include myself, I have the power of at least 4 great grandmasters. I should be invincible in this world. How can I not be able to defeat you? Impossible. Impossible. Revered Ming was extremely deranged. It was obvious that he couldn't accept such an outcome. There's nothing impossible in the world. I've already seen things at a higher level. Song Qinshu recalled the magnificence of Ah Qing's sword, as well as Dugu seeking Furlasa's inhuman sword. Although venerated Ming was far more powerful than those great grandmasters, he had even seen a true god. What else in the world could move him? Seeing that he seemed to be in a daze, venerated Ming had an idea. He directly flew in the direction of the women. Although the distance between them was not close, with his movement technique, he could reach them in the blink of an eye. He grabbed Xiaolong Nu with one hand and Huang Rong with the other. He didn't show any mercy. Clearly, he was attacking Song Qinshu to save him. Sensing that Song Qinshu was also hurrying over, venerated Ming laughed sinisterly. He suddenly turned around and instantly clasped onto Song Qinshu's shoulder. His eyes shone with a strange gray light as he stared at Song Qinshu's eyes. Ha ha ha, surnamed Song, although your martial arts are high, you've still ended up helping me. Venerated Ming laughed maniacally. Song Qinshu frowned. What's this? Revered Ming laughed and said, Tongtian Shaman's attainments in the aspect of psyche energy are quite profound. His research has inspired me greatly. I've modified the body stealing technique according to his cultivation technique. Now, I no longer need to cultivate the heaven and earth great shift to the 7th level. I can directly steal someone else's body. Although the cost is quite high every time, it's nothing compared to eternal life. Moreover, with the astral absorbing technique, I can preserve my cultivation to the greatest extent. You're planning to possess me? Song Qinshu's eyes gradually began to turn gray. Venerated Ming had a smug look on his face. That's why I said that you're destined to help me. The foundation that you've worked so hard to build will become mine. Your women will also become my women. I'll take care of your wives and daughters, and you'll have nothing to worry about. Ha ha, shameless. Brother Song. The women were shocked. They all brandished their swords and tried to stab him. Unfortunately, countless black crows suddenly appeared behind him, preventing the women from getting close to him. You women will hate me now, but you'll love me to death later. After I've possessed Song Qinshu's body, I'll use my powerful mental strength to brainwash you and make you forget what's happening now. You'll only see me as your real man. Venerated Ming's face was full of smugness. His mouth was dry. Although I'm a clean freak and only like girls who haven't experienced the ways of the world, you're all so beautiful. I don't mind poking you a few times. Ha ha ha, at this moment, a cold voice came from the other side. Why don't you think about why I'm so easily controlled by you? How can you still speak? Venerated Ming was shocked. He quickly increased the power of the possession technique. A hint of gold appeared in Song Qinshu's eyes. The previous grayness melted like snow in contact with hot iron. I've been wondering how you could possess Zhang Wuji's body. After all, he couldn't have learned the 7-layer heaven and earth great shift. I was worried that you'd found a new technique to possess someone else's body. If that's the case, in a sense, you've already obtained eternal life. Even if I kill you, the host, you might still be able to escape to someone else's body. So, if I want to kill you, I'll have to kill your soul. Just as he finished speaking, a small golden person wielding sword Qi grew larger and larger in his eyes. It directly entered his forehead. No, an inhuman scream came from venerated Ming's body. Unfortunately, he couldn't stop the golden person at all. In the end, his eyes lost their light and he fell to the ground. The black crows that were surrounding the women also seemed to have lost their source of energy and disappeared into thin air. Big Brother Song. The women couldn't contain their joy when they saw him turn the tables. Fu Junyu pulled her sister's sleeve, but the two of them didn't rush over. Sister, what happened to the golden person just now? I don't know. I just felt a tremor in my soul. I felt like I couldn't move. Fu Junyi couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. We felt it even though we were standing on the side. You don't know how desperate the person who was attacked was. How did this guy practice martial arts at such a young age? He's even more powerful than Master. Fu Junyu's eyes lit up. Fu Junyi smiled and said, "What's wrong? You don't want your precious jade anymore. Do you want to fall in love with someone else?" Sister, Fu Junyu immediately pouted. Once venerated Ming died, the remaining Mongolian soldiers either died or surrendered. The old man in the mountain saw that the situation wasn't right and was about to run away when Song Qingshu kicked the long sword beside his feet. The long sword moved like a beam of light. The old man in the mountain was unable to dodge it. The king of assassins died just like that. After the battle, Kublai and Ali Bug's elite soldiers were all annihilated. Only a few escaped back to Mongolia. The world was shocked when they heard the news. After this battle, the Crown Prince's faction and the Prince's faction were all dead. Song Qingshu supported a remote young member of the royal family to ascend to the throne. At the same time, to ensure his own interests, he needed to leave a force to guard this place for a long time. However, the leader who stayed behind was in a difficult position. Ajiu and Xia Qingqing had their own territories to manage. Originally, the most suitable candidates were Fang Yi and Mu Jianpain, but they had been separated from him on Divine Dragon Island for so many years. He felt sorry for making them stay in the cold Goryeo so soon after they met again. In the end, Huang Rong volunteered to stay in Goryeo. Firstly, Huang Yaoshe needed to stay behind to recuperate. Secondly, she wanted to help him deal with everything here. Song Qingshu was stunned at first, but then he understood. She probably didn't want to return to the Central Plains. After all, there were rumors about them everywhere in the Central Plains. Only in this foreign country could she be with him without any worries. At the same time, this period of time was the most relaxing she had been in many years. Therefore, Song Qingshu agreed. At the same time, he promised to find another confidant to replace him when he returned to China as soon as possible. However, Huang Rong told him not to worry. She didn't even mind staying here forever. Of course, she entrusted him to take care of a pair of children on Peach Blossom Island. It would be best if he could send the siblings over. Naturally, Song Qingshu agreed immediately. After settling everything in Goryeo, he took the fleet south to the Central Plains. Many of the high-ranking officials of Goryeo also went with him. Of course, the purpose was to study abroad and so on. At the same time, the Fu sisters also went south with him. They were still thinking about Brother Baoyu in Jiangnan. Ajiu and Xia Qingqing returned to the Golden Snake Battalion midway and didn't go to Linen. For some reason, they were not very willing to go to other women's territories. In order to make up for the guilt in his heart, during this period of time, Song Qingshu went to their rooms almost half of the time at night. Fang Yi and Mu Jianpain handed over the fleet of Divine Dragon Island to their subordinates and then followed them to the southern Song dynasty. On the one hand, they had more time to spend with Song Qingshu. On the other hand, they wanted to go back to the Mu mansion to have a look. Hua Qingtong returned to Yangzhou midway. She was worried about her sister. Jin Bingyun and Dan Yuru also left at about the same time. During this period of time, they suddenly realized that although there were many women around Song Qingshu, basically, everyone had their own territories and fields that could help him. The two women's base was in Mongolia. Out of a sense of crisis, the two women decided to go back to help Song Qingshu to the greatest extent. Of course, Jin Bingyun was passive in the whole process. She was not in the mood to think about these things. However, she was instigated by Dan Yuru and was finally persuaded. Song Qingshu went back to Lin An with Xiaolong Nu, Shui Baoqin, and the other women. Because of the great merit of annihilating all the elites of Mongolia, the southern Song dynasty had reached the point where there was no more reward for him. Someone suggested to give him 9 tin, but he refused, because it was not the right time. As expected, when the news of him refusing 9 tin spread out, the whole country praised him. Instead, a lot of other kinds of official positions were given. Song Qingshu took this opportunity to arrange and promote his trusted subordinate. His power was even greater than Jia Shidao's at his peak. After spending a celestial time with the women in Lin An, news came from Mongolia again. When Olohedni learned of the death of Kublai and Ali Buj, he couldn't help but be furious. He personally came out and took charge of the court. He called back the Joki clan and Chagatai clan that the Mongols had left in the western countries to intimidate the local people. Originally, the Joki clan and Chagatai clan didn't want to come back, but when they realized that the imperial clan was declining, they had a chance to take the position of Great Khan of Mongolia, so they all changed their minds. After a few months of rest, the Mongols brought the last hundreds of thousands of cavalry south. Their first stop was still to attack western Xia. Song Qingshu had already received the news in advance and had discussed countermeasures with Mu Wanqing, Li Qinglu, and the others. Because the western Xia army had already been crippled by Temujin last time, if they were to fight head-on now, there would be no way out. Therefore, they surrendered to the Mongols. The Mongols had always been good at recruiting their enemies and using them as servants. Now that they were in need of manpower, they were very happy about Western Xia's surrender. They gave the Western Xia royal family a very good treatment and kept their own forces. Of course, Western Xia had the obligation to provide logistical supplies to the Mongols, and they also needed to send troops to participate in the Mongols' next military campaign. Western Xia had been established for 100 years and had fought against the Song dynasty for 100 years without a clear winner. Their quick surrender shocked the southern Song dynasty. But the most shocking thing was yet to come. After the Mongols conquered Western Xia, they marched their army east and attacked the Jin. Although the Mongols were weak on the water, they were still invincible on land. The Jin army was forced to retreat again and again. They even lost Chang'an, an important city in Guangzhou. But the Nuzhenren were also a fighting people. The fighting genes of their ancestors gradually awakened. After the Jin started to use Tongguan and the Yellow River as their defense line, they repelled the Mongols' invasions several times and stopped them from advancing. The mainstream view of the southern Song dynasty was to see the two countries fight each other. After all, both the Mongols and the Jin were enemies. Comparatively speaking, the Mongols hated the Jin more. But what the Mongols did next made the southern Song dynasty restless. They used the same trick and asked the southern Song dynasty to bypass the Jin's defense line at Tongguan and the Yellow River. The Song people were not stupid. They wanted to see the Mongols and the Jin locked in a stalemate. It would be best if every last drop of blood was used. But the Mongols did not wait for the southern Song dynasty to agree. They directly broke through Hanzhong and entered Nanyang from the Shangyong line. They went around to the hinterland of the Jin. The Jin fought in a hurry and were defeated. Because of the Mongols' attack and the fear of the southern Song dynasty of being interdependent, Song Qingshu finally had a reason to send his army. Had he not been there, the southern Song court would have been furious, but they would probably have settled the matter in the end. But now, with a god of war like Song Qingshu, and with the several previous victories, the southern Song court was much stronger. Therefore, Song Qingshu led the army north and secretly contacted the Jin sisters. He communicated with the loyal army of the Jin. The armies of the two countries cooperated perfectly. In addition, the Western Xia army suddenly rebelled. After a decisive battle, the main force of the Mongols was completely destroyed. The imperial court of the southern Song dynasty had originally sent Song Qingshu to the north with the intention of slowing down the Mongolian invasion and helping the Jin kingdom a little so that the scales of victory could be balanced again. However, they did not expect that he would make a big news without a sound. The main force of the Mongols was destroyed and the Western Xia surrendered to Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu really had no more rewards for such a great achievement. This time, someone suggested that Song Qingshu should be rewarded with 9 pegs. No one objected. The imperial court officially rewarded Song Qingshu with 9 pegs. He did not rush to enter the court, did not pay his respects, and entered the palace with a sword. The knowledgeable people in the imperial court knew that this was not a good sign for the royal family. After all, there were too many similar examples in history. But now, Song Qingshu was powerful in the court. After several great victories, he had an extremely high prestige in the world. Even the matter between Huang Rong and him was not a big deal to everyone. Instead, they felt that Huang Rong had taken advantage of him. Everyone treated it as a topic of conversation after a meal. Moreover, Song Qingshu's direct and indirect control of territory was no less than that of the southern Song dynasty. Countless armies were loyal to him. As a result, many of the southern Song dynasty's clans and knowledgeable people had already realized something. However, as the situation was like this, there was nothing they could do. Many people had even begun to pledge their loyalty to him. After all, the merit of attaining the throne was too tempting. At other times there might be the risk of being exterminated. But now that Song Qingshu was the de facto emperor of the southern Song dynasty, what risk could there be? Under this trend, even the most loyal officials and families started to offer olive branches to Song Qingshu. After all, everyone had their own families and their own interests to consider. Under this premise, Song Qingshu found another opportunity to attack the Jin kingdom in the north. He won another great victory and recovered Bianjing. The whole country was in an uproar. The Song kingdom had been weak for many years. When had it ever been so mighty? Moreover, the recovery of Bianjing was the dream of many people. Zhou and Xia Qingqing led the Golden Snake Camp, Zhou Zhirua led the Green Camp of Yangzhou, and Yang Miaozhen led the Red Coat Army to completely merge with the southern Song dynasty. But everyone knew who they listened to. Song Qingshu's reputation reached an unprecedented height in the court and among the people. Under the instruction of the Grand Tutor, the young emperor of the southern Song dynasty offered to abdicate. Of course, Song Qingshu refused. After a lot of refusal, he finally accepted the emperor's abdication. He changed the country's name to Qi and became the emperor. He made Zhou Zhirua his empress and Zhou and Ren Yingying his imperial concubines. In order to appease the old officials of the Song dynasty, the princesses of the southern Song dynasty were also given high titles in the imperial harem. Then, Song Qingshu continued the northern expedition. At the same time, he constantly sent people to summon the Jin kingdom to surrender. The Jin kingdom had suffered a great loss in the war against the Mongols. They had also lost a lot of strategic depth in the past years. In addition, Song Qingshu was so powerful that they knew it would be difficult to resist. In the past, Song Qingshu was a subject of the southern Song dynasty. Even though the Jin kingdom knew they were no match for him, they did not consider surrendering. After all, the hatred between the Jin kingdom and the Song dynasty was too deep. However, after Song Qingshu established a new country, the hatred between the two sides no longer existed. Even if there were some among the people and the royal family of the southern Song dynasty, it did not affect the overall situation. Therefore, under the operation of the Gubai sisters, the #1 official Tang Quobian in the country, and many generals of the loyal army were Song Qingshu's confidants. It could be said that everyone from the judges to the contestants were his people. Although there were still many hardliners in the Jin kingdom, they could not resist the general trend. In the end, they surrendered. After accepting the surrender of the Jin kingdom, Song Qingshu treated the royal family of the Jin kingdom well. At the same time, he kept most of the Jin kingdom's nobles and officials, but he added some checks and balances. The people of the Jin kingdom, who were originally anxious after the surrender, were all happy. Many people in the southern Song dynasty were somewhat critical of this, but Song Qingshu's prestige was too high. In history, it was relatively easy for the founding emperors to make any reforms. It was because of his high prestige that he had the military, financial, and personnel power in his hand. In addition, Song Qingshu secretly established the public opinion propaganda organization in the past few years, so he quickly reversed the criticism. At the same time, he treated the royal family of the Xixia kingdom well. He let Li Qinglu, Mu Wanqing, and others continue to lead the nobles of the Xixia kingdom to manage the original land. Of course, they would send hostages to the capital, and the imperial court would also send a group of officials there. For the ministers of a subjugated country, this kind of treatment was simply overjoyed. Therefore, the Xixia kingdom and the Jin kingdom soon stabilized. After a dozen years of cultural education, they would be completely integrated into the big family. After that, Song Qingshu continued to lead the army to attack the Mongols in the north and drove the Mongols back to the north. After many years of attacks, the bloodline of the Golden family withered, and finally could not suppress the Mongols anymore. The Mongols were divided into two parts, the Wala in the west and the Tartars in the east. The Wala and the Tartars each had several large tribes. Among them, Hai Wanli led the most powerful Wala tribe, and the Ruyang Mansion led the most powerful Tartars tribe. Zhao Min avenged her father and helped her brother become independent. After that, she retreated and came to live with Song Qingshu. In addition to these two forces, Princess Yaluan also controlled some old subordinate. The hatred between the divided Mongols was also very deep, and they often fell into disputes, so they had no time to go south to the Central Plains. In the process of solving the Mongols, Liao also surrendered to the Qi kingdom. After all, Liao was no longer as powerful as before, and only a small area was left. In the past, with the support of the Mongols, it barely survived in the cracks between the Qin kingdom and the Jin kingdom. Now that the Mongols had fallen, Liao naturally had no hope. Of course, if it was not Su Quan who secretly controlled Liao, it would not be so easy to surrender. After Liao surrendered and the Mongols were completely divided, the attention of the world was on the Qin kingdom. Now, the Qin kingdom was basically surrounded by the forces of the Qi kingdom. With the help of the Koreans in the east, the Qin kingdom was soon shaken by the pressure of Song Qingshu's army. At this time, the situation of the Qin kingdom was the same as that of the Qi kingdom in the last years of the Spring and Autumn War. Although it still had great strength, the Qin kingdom had unified the world, and its power was gone. It no longer wanted to resist. In addition, after the surrender of the Xixia kingdom and the Jin kingdom, the people of the Qin kingdom no longer had any worries, and it was natural for them to surrender. After Song Qingshu unified the world, the people of the Qin kingdom began to urge him to give the corresponding titles to the concubines. Although he was not willing to give the concubines the titles, he could not resist the etiquette, and many things could not be changed by his will. In the end, he conferred the title of Empress to Zhou Zhiruo, and imperial noble consort to Dongfang Mushu. In the eyes of the people, this imperial noble consort was extremely mysterious. Few people knew her origin, but she was unexpectedly able to become the highest-ranking concubine. She conferred the title of imperial consort to Jiu, Ren Yingying consort to Shu consort, Zhao Min consort to De consort, and Wanyan Jebi consort to Xian consort. Originally, she was not willing to enter the harem of Song Qingshu, but she could not resist his coaxing and pestering. In addition, she had given birth to a child with Tangqua's surname, so she could answer to her late husband. Mu Wanqing was consort Zhuang, Su Quan was consort Jing, Zhao Hu and Zhao Yuan were consorts Hui, Xue Baochai and Xue Baoqin were consorts Shun, Xia Qingqing was consort Kong, and Xiao Long Nu was consort Ning. Originally, Xia Qingqing was not willing to enter the harem as a consort, but Song Qingshu was too domineering. In addition, everyone in the Golden Snake camp knew about their relationship, so she did not hide it. In addition, Song Qingshu intended to give Icy Snow a consort position, because she was the first woman who treated him well after he came to this world. It could be said that the starting point and turning point of his fate were brought by her. The relationship between them was the purest, and it was not mixed with any interests. However, when he found her, she was unwilling. She could be with him in private, but she could not bring shame to her late husband's reputation. She would never agree to enter the harem openly. Song Qingshu could use force on others, but he could not bear to disobey her. So he gave up the idea and built many villas for her by the White Horse Lake and near the Jade Pen Villa in Liaodong. Firstly, she could take care of her son, and secondly, she could visit her often. The Wang family was in an awkward situation. Originally, there was definitely a consort position in their family, but it was troublesome to decide who should take it. If they let Li Qingluo take it, the Wang family could not afford to lose face. If they let Wang Yuyan take it, the Wang family could not get over it. Although Wang Ziding had thought of some ways, they were all rejected by the family, so it was delayed. However, there were still 2 vacant positions, Consort Li and Consort Hua, so there would be opportunities in the future. In addition, there were 9 consorts: Zhao Yi, Zhao Rong, Zhao Yuan, Xiu Yi, Xiu Yuan, Chong Yi, Chong Yi, Chong Yi, Chong Yi, and Chong Yi. They were given to Yelu Nanxian, Li Qinglu, Zhao Yingluo, Wanyan Ping, Wanyan Zhongjie, Tajkis, Hua Qingtong, Yang Miaozhen, and Yelu Yen. These people basically represented the powers of various countries, so they needed to be balanced. Many people were not without criticism. Li Qinglu was Jia Baoyu's wife in name, and Tajkis was even more ridiculous. Although she was once the most beautiful woman in the martial arts world, how old was her daughter now? However, Song Qingshu stood his ground against the opinions of the masses, and with the integration of various ethnic groups, such as the Mongolian, Jin, Qing, and Xixia countries, things like this were common, so everyone left it at that. Zhao Yingluo was different from her 2 heartless sisters. She was quite dissatisfied with Song Qingshu's replacement, and it took her a lot of effort to coax him back. In addition, there were 9 consorts: Li Yuanji, Fang Yi, Chu Fian, Zhong Ling, Gu Zixian, Jin Bingyun, Dan Yuru, He Taizhou, and Sang Feihong. Although Li Kexiu betrayed them, the kindness of Li Yuanji sacrificing her life to save them was still there. In addition, there were many former subordinates of the Li family in the Green Camp of Jiangbei, so it was natural for her to be promoted. Jin Bingyun did not care much about her position. The reason she was willing to enter the palace was mainly to get closer to Song Qingshu, so she could take the opportunity to explore the heavenly Tao. Unfortunately, that guy always brought her to discuss the Tao of human relations. The others had contributed a lot to Song Qingshu's career, like He Taizhou and Sang Feihong, who were in charge of the Jianghu's intelligence network and worked hard to promote Song Qingshu's public opinion. If not for their low status, their positions would probably be higher. There were 13 consorts: Xingrou, Kazli, Shenbijuan, Shuanger, Lanfeng, Lu Wushuang, Chengying, Azi, Pucha, Qiucao, Shueixing, Mu Jianpain, Luobing, and Shishangyun. Kazli did not have the title of consort, but she had a special fragrance, so the palace maids privately called her the fragrant consort. Other than that, Huang Rong refused the title of consortly. She would rather stay in Goryeo and return to Peach Blossom Island sometimes. She no longer refused Song Qingshu's visit, but she was still unwilling to enter the palace. Because of her relationship with her husband's family, and because she did not want to enter the palace to compete with the other ladies for favor, Lady Ruan declined the invitation. Chen Yuan was known as a femme fatale. She was worried that she would bring misfortune and criticism to Song Qingshu, so she did not want to be conferred a title. She was already tired of staying in the harem in her early years. Whether it was an imperial consort or a consort, she had been both. She really did not want to step into the palace again. Another important reason was that she did not want to cut off her daughter Aku's path. She was very clear about her daughter's thoughts. Nan Lan had always been in poor health, and she had not been well since she fell ill a few years ago. She felt that she did not have much time left, so she entrusted her daughter, Miao Rulan, to Song Qingshu to take care of. Qi Feng lived in seclusion in Ma Shipu, not wanting to get involved in any more troubles. Qing Yaojia finally gave birth to a fat boy, which could be considered as fulfilling one of her wishes. Yili Xian and Ah Man lived with the Taiyan tribe, refusing the invitation from the messenger. They clearly did not want to leave the plains to live in the Central Plains. Ah Xiu was specially brought to the capital by her grandfather by Zizai from the snowy mountain. Li Wan often saw Li Macho sighing at home. She wanted to persuade her, but did not know how to. She was considering whether or not she should find Xiao Long Nu to be a middleman, but thinking of Xiao Long Nu's naive personality, she was afraid that she would not be able to do the job. Li Macho was not the only one sighing. Madame Tang from the Jin Kingdom was also sighing. The Fu sisters also finally knew of Song Qingshu's identity. They held their swords and chased after him for a long time. Hai Wanli and Yalun both loved and hated Song Qingshu. If they met again, it would be more likely that they would meet on the battlefield. On this day, Song Qingshu was reading through a vast amount of memorials. He thought that being an emperor was not as carefree and happy as when he was alone. Suddenly, a palace maid came to report, "Your Majesty, it's not good, it's not good. Concubine De and the Empress are fighting again." "They're fighting again?" Song Qingshu rubbed his forehead and quickly rushed to Kuanning Palace. Before he arrived, he could hear Zhou Zhiruo and Zhao Min quarreling. "Now that I am the Empress, you have to kneel to me. Pei, aren't you just relying on the fact that you married him first? In terms of ability, who among the concubines can you beat? Humph, this is fate. In any case, you fought with me for a lifetime, but in the end, you still lost to me, hee hee. I'm so angry, I don't want to be concubine anymore." Song Qingshu happened to see Zhao Min running out angrily. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Min, don't say that out of anger." "I didn't say that out of anger. I don't want to be concubine anymore, I want to be the Empress." Zhao Min stared at him angrily. Song Qingshu felt a headache coming on. Humph, I know you are in a difficult position, so you don't want to be the only Empress. You can be like our Mongolia, and have more than one Empress," Zhao Min said. "There is no such precedent in the Central Plains dynasty." Song Qingshu said embarrassedly. "What can't be changed? As the founding emperor, you can't change these things?" Zhao Min's eyes were red. Oh, you are pretending to be pitiful and seducing me again." Zhou Zhiruo came out with a smile. Zhao Min's expression returned to normal. "Anyway, I don't care, I can't be lower than this woman." "That's not up to you," Zhou Zhiruo said gloatingly. Seeing that the two women were about to quarrel again, Song Qingshu finally exploded. "Stop quarreling, come with me to the west, there are many countries in the west, I will give each of you a country, not to mention the Empress, you can even be the Empress Dowager. Western expedition?" Hearing his words, the eyes of the concubines who rushed over after hearing the news lit up. Although many women don't mind their status, they mind that their sons will be lower than others in the future. But the cake in the Central Plains is only so big, it can't be divided. If they go to the west, it will be completely different. The world is so vast, there is no need for them to fight. In the spring of the next year, Emperor Qi Song Qinshu led the army to the west for the first time. The whole world began to tremble. The end of the book. Bestowing concubines turns out to be not a happy thing. I almost can't recognize the word concubine. This book has been written for more than 6 years. It is finally finished. When I wrote the words "the end of the book," I trembled a little, for a moment in a trance. I couldn't believe it was true. Thank you to all the readers for your company over the past 6 years. There is no goodbye in the world. This book is finished. My new book, The Celestial Land, has been published on Zhongxing. Now it has more than 300,000 words. If you are interested, you can take a look. In addition, the follow-up will be on the official account. Monk Lu Ru. There will be new chapters on some characters detailed endings, married life and so on. In addition to some of the relatively unimportant characters mentioned before, there will definitely be some chapters for some popular characters. Of course, let me take a break first, I'm really tired. Finally, thank you again for all your support over the years. Thank you everyone. Chapter 25-29. Stealing Fragrance Expert's new book, Earth Sex Fairy, has been released. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.